6 o'clock on Thursday, April the 4th, and we're going to call the regular meeting to order. First item is to approve minutes from last time, which was March 21st. Could we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any changes, adjustments, whatever? I didn't have any. Nice job on the minutes. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, set adjust agenda. I would like to add that I think, we have economic development loan discussion at the end, but I think we have Allison Lowe coming this evening, so I'd like to add item 4 just to have a public discussion about that before we go into executive session, just to get any updates. People okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody have anything else? So I'm going to add an item 4, Yellow Barn update. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
You second? Second.
Yeah. All right. All in favor of adjusting the agenda to add item number 4 for a Yellow Barn update, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So we'll roll with that. Next is communication from the audience. Do we have folks here who want to communicate about something that we're not going to communicate about as an agenda item?
We've seen an agenda here. So.
Oh, you haven't seen the agenda?
No.
Tom?
Is there an agenda? I'm Nancy Kellogg, and I would like to modify. I didn't see any discussion at the last meeting about the waste management composting, community composting task force.
Mm-hmm. We did have some discussion about that, and
it's not mentioned in the notes, is it? Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's what I was told at the beginning rather than the end, but the policy evidently had.
Is that the,
anyway, that's.
Is that minutes in it too, or is that just the agenda?
Yeah.
Can you look at it under 3?
Anyway, I just want to make sure that there's a diversified group of people, not just all homeowners. Otherwise the public, which I believe are at least half of the population here are tenants, they're not going to be engaged. It's going to feel like it's a top down, and it's people that have the resources and the space to do their own composting. Yeah,
so we'd like to, general ideas, we'd like to put together a task force that would look into this and provide some information back to the select board. So we're going to, and we had to decide.
Outreach, like just a note in the paper or at the post office, looking for tenants, people who are tenants to participate in this task force. I know Sherry's still in Japan, but...
yeah, so we had said last time we'd put it off until our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight, to discuss.
So Sherry could be here.
Yeah. So I should...
It'd be great if you were in contact with Sherry, I think.
I should wait and talk to Sherry about being a little more inclusive than just the people.
I mean, we can record. I mean, I think we are recording now that you're expressing interest. Are you expressing interest in being on this task force?
Right, but I also want it to be tenants, public.
So
otherwise, people that are, if it feels like it's just top down and bureaucratic nonsense. This is the end of the extension for managing food scraps and waste, food waste. And I would hope that, and I used to be on Sherry's on the waste management board, and I would hope that the police would support enforcement, so that people aren't throwing garbage, and also putting it in the landfill that's polluting the Canadian water, drinking water. I mean, this is what's happening with
So this is why.
waste management.
So I'm just gonna kind of pull it together and say that this is why, in fact, why we need this task force to
Right.
sort out what can be done to help, if, what kind of structure could be put in place or education could be put out there to help facilitate composting in Hardwick.
Yeah.
So it's great that you're interested in it.
As well as the contributions of those said tenants to deal with their compost.
Yep. Right, because it's not, the mandate is not that the town somehow magically provide composting. The mandate is that people individually compost. So if we can help them in some way, that's great.
But collectively, I mean, if everybody's got their own pile of garbage, and not enough steam to turn it every 3 days, there's a lot to composting.
Yes.
There's also I just want to make it clear so we're not getting phone calls, there's also no criminal statute for composting, so the police are not handling
It's not police
composting
level.
issues. That would be handled, eventually I would assume under natural resources, but,
The public servant's purpose was to enforce the law.
yeah, it's not in the criminal statute.
So there are different sections of statute. So you're saying this may end up coming down under, say, natural resources?
A&R?
Yeah.
They're not-
Well, they
So-
do enforce
We don't know.
deep pockets. Well, I know this from being on the
Yeah.
board. They'll only enforce deep pockets, but something's got to change. And Chris Duff manages, from Cabot, he manages Johnson. I mean, they have public composting.
Yep. So, okay, so that's
It
great
can
to
be
know,
done.
and I think that is great information to bring to a task force.
Okay.
And-
Wait,
Yeah, and if we want to do more outreach, I don't know if Sherry had planned to do any outreach. Well, we've kind of pushed onto her, and it's easy to do because she's not here.
I put it, Didn't I? I think I did.
So, yeah, and maybe Doug will have something in his notes about this that we're looking for folks.
till next meeting.
And if anybody is interested, they could send an email letter of interest to town manager's office.
That's fine.
And we have now that you're interested.
How would the public know about this?
Well, they're watching on television.
Oh,
Or town meeting, or, I don't know, if they're not otherwise engaged. I mean, if you have suggestions for ways to reach out to folks, I mean,
yeah, well,
Could easily go on Front Porch Forum, I guess.
we could throw it on Front Porch Forum, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we should do that.
Sherry first, just so she is.
Yeah, okay, so we'll work with, I'll try
Work with Sherry.
try to remember to email Sherry about that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. All right. Any more communication from the audience for Larry Hamel?
I have not yet seen an agenda either. Is the parklet concept on the agenda?
Parklet concept, item number 3.
Well, we should clarify that the agendas are public.
Say it again.
We should clarify that the agendas are public and available. And there's better ways of asking for an agenda, to see an agenda than the way it's being asked tonight.
You're up on the website. All right, well, I've got comments about it. Should I make them, or?
Well, if you could hold them until we get to that discussion, that'd be awesome.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Next up is, okay, any more communication from audience, or everybody's, okay.
Eric, can I make a comment?
You may.
Just for the public, the agendas are posted publicly 2 days in advance of our meeting, so those are posted here at the town manager's office, outside the clerk's office, at the post office, at the East Hardwick post office, up on the town's website. So just in case anybody is just wondering, hey, I haven't seen the information, just moving forward, that's some places that you can get that. And if you need to see it in advance, don't hesitate to reach out to the manager's office. Be glad to get it to you, just so folks know that that information is out there and available.
Although it's generally in draft form before that.
For what we are posting,
Yeah.
the information that is posted 2 days in advance is generally what you will all see here tonight, and
But
if you make
before
any
that,
modifications.
before that would be in a draft form if
You might
we had
not see it
anything.
before that.
Right.
Technically,
Yeah.
we put it up 2 days in advance of the meeting, so if anybody needs to see it, don't hesitate to reach out if you haven't seen it in one of these other locations.
Great. All right. Next up is town manager report.
I've been told I only get 3 minutes, so I'm starting my timer now. So just real quick on the ice has gone out. We did have some excavation work, so for folks that haven't noticed, the ice went out adjacent to Wolcott Street, so we've avoided any additional problems with high water. Mother Nature cooperated with us on that with this freeze-thaw cycle we've seen recently, so that's good news, of course. The Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District did contact the manager's office about a future grant opportunity we're looking at for a regional recycling project. That has been put on hold for now, so we'll keep involved. Obviously, Sherry's active on that group, and I'm an alternate to the group, so we're keeping involved there. We are continuing to receive candidate submissions for the Conservation Commission, and I appreciate Kristen Leahy's help on that, zoning administrator. In regards to some public works issues, just recently completed the wastewater system operation, maintenance, and emergency response plan per permit requirements. That's submitted to Department of Environmental Conservation. We are in the process of working on our public water system consumer confidence report. That's a yearly report. So this will be a synopsis of the water quality and testing results for the community's water for 2018. That's not due until July, but we usually run that out in the upcoming billing cycle, and we're working on that now. Had a recent planning meeting with Summit Engineering and V-Trans representatives to look at the Creamery Road project as a part of LVRT, and things are progressing nicely there. I'll also mention now that we're continuing to do work on our grant to USDA for community facilities. This is a separate project for some improvements on LVRT, basically east of the village area, so we're continuing to do some work there. Yellow Barn Business Accelerator, the town and Eric actually is involved with some planning on this. We're continuing to be involved with planning meetings there, and things are proceeding nicely. There's a lot of work that is happening on this to secure financing, obtain required permits, continue to map out final design plans. A detail item here, the manager's office has received a petition notice that was addressed to Eric, and it's from the Vermont Public Utility Commission. New England Wireless, which is effectively AT&T, is planning for improvements to go to a 5G network on the Bridgman Hill Communications Tower. This is what is considered a de minimis notification, and as such, PUC can issue a certificate of public good, so everybody is aware on that. Casey Rowell, our business manager, has been getting some information together in regards to roles and responsibilities for the town energy coordinator assignment. This is coming off some of the assignments that we approve with town meeting and following. That one is vacant as of now, so once those details are mapped up, we'll be advertising with the website and put it up on Hardwick Front Porch Forum, so we can get somebody that may be interested in serving in that capacity. Did have a walk around with Chief Cochran just to look at some of our crosswalk markings here earlier this week, and that work that we had done last fall did not hold up too well. That was 4 of the sidewalk areas where it was an application type technique, and the fact of the matter is it didn't work too well.
So that's the second time we've tried something different.
Sure.
It didn't work that well.
So
Didn't work any better.
Right, didn't work any better.
Well, it was better than the paint, but it didn't hold up the way it was advertised.
Well, essentially, we still got to do it every year.
Exactly.
And it's, what, double, triple the cost, right?
Yeah.
It costs us, what is it, about $500 a year to paint crosswalks, and this is over $7,000.
Yeah, more than 3 times. I say we go with the $500.
Yeah, I do too. Go back to the paint.
So just on that,
That's a
Tom and I talked about this, and you know, we're gonna get we'll get those locations upgraded. Traditionally, when that happens, is in advance of the Memorial Day weekend, so that we're clearly marked. You know, we've got a handful of signs that did take it hard during the winter months. Tom's aware of that, so the yellow signs, just so with traffic inbound sees, you know, what we got and pay attention. So we've looked at that. That past minute should not be counted against me, okay, on the report, all right? I just want to say that.
The timer on hold
No, I'm
again.
just saying, you know, for that kind of money, we're better off looking at painting them again in the fall and see if that
painting.
keeps them more.
Keeps them up more through more of the year.
Paid them twice as, if we paid them twice a year, it'd still be a hell of a lot less
You
money.
go through about 15, 20 gallons of paint.
But you know what I'm saying, maybe it'd still be cheaper and maybe.
Yeah, maybe more effective
Maybe
even.
an improvement than from what
If
we
you
have.
paint them later in the
I don't
summer
know.
or
I don't
the
know
fall.
if the summer use, obviously, I'm sure the winter wear is more than the summer wear.
Yeah, but they do start, the paint does start to wear down even through the summer, so maybe hitting them again at some point.
I looked at them today, they definitely didn't hold up.
I think we should do that as a test again, like maybe take those crosswalks and you work into your schedule to do it.
October or something.
Or maybe earlier, I don't know, but let's try it.
Right, maybe early, maybe before Labor Day.
Say,
Yeah.
in August.
Yeah.
In August,
Yeah.
it's still warm enough.
Yep, and just see how that works.
Tom, are you going to have to remove the remnants of those?
No.
Those markings, just
go right
paint
over it.
right over it?
Were those, I know there was the kind you could paint on that was thicker, and then
They
there
were
was kind of,
thermoplastic.
Yeah.
and were they inlaid into the road, or were they?
They're heated though,
They were heated up, laid
heated
down.
too.
The ones we did before was, they ground down, they ground the pavement a little bit to inlay and then painted, but then the paint,
The
it
paint
wasn't.
just wears off. There's so much traffic. I mean,
So we did try like an inlaid
Oh, okay,
approach.
that's what I was wondering.
That was.
First time.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago, or do you
Yeah.
remember?
it was almost 3 years ago, I
Yeah,
think.
3 years anyway.
So we're still looking, if anybody has the perfect answer to keeping crosswalk parking
Well,
markings. and
unfortunately,
pavement
like many aspects of highways and roads, there's no remedy for maintenance.
Right, you just have to
There's
keep doing
useful life,
it.
everything has a useful life, and when it's over.
Okay, something with a longer useful life.
There you go.
Something that lasts,
But my point being is, it's not available,
okay.
I don't believe.
And just to make sure everybody heard this, Tom and I had, checked in on this, and again, the plan is that we'll get them remarked, in advance of
Yeah,
Memorial Day
right.
weekend, so we've, got them clearly marked for folks. Okay, just a couple more items. Manager's office did host a V-Trans representative. Tom took part in this meeting, and our business manager, Casey Rowell, did. We meet with V-Trans on regular issues, but for this, we're just making sure we have things in order in regards to our transportation grants and, anything having to do with our inventory of roads as examples. So everything is in good order right there. We are in the process of doing our interviews for our public highway position. So we're anticipate getting somebody assigned to that position within the next couple of weeks, and that's right on target with what we had mapped out for a schedule looking 4 to 6 weeks back now. We have, I did assist the Judah Vine Memorial Library with a sign-off of a USDA Community Facilities Grant. This is a grant that would be put toward the future expansion project. Related to that, working on some deed work that needs to be closed up with the consolidation of the senior center property and the town property, so I'm communicating with the town's attorney on this. One final thing I'll close with here is that just making sure the citizens in the community are aware that we do have a contract for assessor work in place with New England Municipal Consultants Limited, and that work is taking place at this time. So that's including hosting of office hours, and it is in consultation with our current listers. The assessors are going to be conducting field work, They have actually provided a notice, so if people are aware, have informed the police department. I'm in the process of getting a notice up on the town's website, and then we'll also put that up in the Front Porch Forum, and we anticipate also putting a short piece in the Gazette, whether it's a banner ad or just a note that this is taking place, so folks are aware. Related to this, the listers wanted me to relay that they're going to be doing an abstract on the grand list in mid-May, and they would anticipate any needed grievance hearings that are needed to be taking place toward the end of May. If I have my information correct, I think that may be a little bit earlier on the schedule than might have happened in previous year's cycles, so just be advised of that.
Can I add a little bit?
Yeah.
It is earlier in the cycle, so there are people I know over the past couple of years that have come in and mentioned that they might like to have the listers come back out, or they want to talk to the listers. Now would be a really good time to call the offices, because they're going to be almost 2 to 3 weeks ahead of where they normally are come the end of May for grievances and so on. So now would be the time to try and get in touch with them.
And that would be through the lister's office number. Help me out, Alberta. I don't know
Which
right
is
off the top
my
of
number,
head.
472-5971.
All right, thanks.
Lacey, do you want to take?
And, I'm sorry?
Well, there's a word about halfway back up the report.
Go ahead.
You said that this upgrade is considered de minimis modification.
Yep.
What does that mean?
De minimis modification, basically what it means is it just triggers some legal parameter where they don't have to go out and have a long stakeholder process for public hearings, so that they effectively can move forward on doing the technology improvement and don't necessarily have to have a bunch of other layers to proceed with that.
Don't have to start all over.
Although what they sent, the thing they sent is about half an inch thick and includes a lot of engineering documents, and it takes a lot of leaving.
It means they provide the information so that,
Right.
it's not provide the information.
They have to provide a lot of information, but when you
No one
look
can
through the whole
deny
thing, I mean, the gist of it is they're going to change some of the actual like antenna receiver things on the tower up there. So
I've got
They're
the
not
executive
changing
summary.
they're not changing, right?
Height or any of the things that the permits.
It's minimal modifications
Correct.
to what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it looked like.
Well, I thought, but, you know, I haven't done Latin for 60 years.
I wonder if some of that may be the requirement for the FirstNet program that the state signed on to. They're required to do it within 2 years, all the upgrades to the system. So that may.
Oh, I mean that they're trying to yeah, they're upgrading.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this particular document is because they have to notify us.
It's basically notification.
Yeah, because they're going for a certificate of public good, so the town had to be notified.
If they were gonna go up another 5 feet, it would be.
That'd be a whole different
whatever that
thing.
word was.
It wouldn't be de minimis.
It would not.
No, it would be de maximus. Yes. All right.
Sure, I've never done that, but I've.
Me either.
We can find our way through it.
You just have a natural talent for language, obviously.
Yeah, right.
So I went past 3 minutes, my apologies. I think it was about 6, all right? So that's all I had. If there's any questions from the select board.
Yeah, I want to circle back to do we need to have a discussion about the town agent?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I believe so. So you want me to just hit that real quick?
I'd like to just hit it right now, because it was kind of in your
hit it, knock it down.
report.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I'll just give the narrative here. The House, the Legislative House Committee on Government Operations, the attorney for that group reached out to the manager's office earlier this week, and they are looking at some proposed legislation. It's under House Bill 143. There are only 6 towns in the state with a charter that lists a town agent. Hardwick happens to be one of those towns remaining. The proposed legislation would eliminate the town agent as a required position, if you will.
Are you the town agent?
Sherry.
No.
No, it's Nancy.
Karen.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Karen Holmes.
Yeah. What does the town agent do?
I cannot answer that.
So basically the town agent does, in a different scale, what you do. Karen always used to come and bid on properties at tax sales, and that's pretty much it.
That was it?
Yep, they have the authority to bid like that at a tax sale for us, and that's really all that it is. But because you filled the position on the board, you've been coming and doing it, so.
So we don't have a problem with it.
Does she get paid for this?
No.
Okay, so we're just removing one brick off her shoulders and,
So I guess the question I would raise is, is there a problem with us eliminating the position? I mean, that's the ultimate question. What problem does it create for us in regards to our town operations if we were to eliminate the position? That's how I look at
Well,
it.
given that there's only 6 towns left, and the legislature is trying to get rid of those 6 towns having one, then I would think it would be a good time to get rid of it.
Is there anything that would be a problem with not having the position?
No, not at all.
Select board's discretion.
I thought, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I read something about also that the town agent historically would have maybe had a role that was similar to an auditor that we now hire out. But am I wrong about?
The what?
I thought I read that they historically may have done work like auditors do, but we now all hire.
Well, and possibly in other towns, but we had auditors too, so.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't think that that was a role that was ever overlapping with.
And Hardwick, and maybe I'm just wrong about that and confused, which is
I
possible
went to
too.
I don't know, one of the, what was it, the Vermont League of Cities and
Yeah,
Towns sends
yeah.
a little digest thing.
Yeah.
And they had a little snippet on it in there, and they were saying that the town auditor was sort of like the town lawyer.
Right,
And
or town agent.
I mean, sorry, the town agent was kind of
Right.
right, so it would represent the
right.
town in legal matters, basically.
Right, but we hire lawyers.
But not, select board just hires lawyers, so it's kind of totally outdated, I don't know.
Right. Anyway, yes, we don't, so they were looking for just feedback from us, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so the general sentiment of the board is, we don't need it, right?
Give
No
Karen a
objections.
notice.
She'll be glad to hear that.
And my other comment would be, can we add to that list of things that are getting rid of, positions that we're getting rid of? We don't want to get rid of Larry's position, we still need Larry's position, but the service coordinator we still need.
yeah.
Okay, so I will follow up with the contact just to let them know there's no objections from the town of Hardwick.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right.
Awesome.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for my report?
Good. All right, next up, road foreman, Tom Fadden. Tell us about the roads and public works, what's going on?
They are awesome.
Are they?
No, not really, but it sounds good.
How are they?
Well, I don't know, I got to complain about a white 1-ton truck running up and down Macville Road.
Oh, yeah, that's Danny.
Problems out there. But anyways,
Danny plowed it wide enough so 2 1-tons could meet, so pretty sure I can drive on it if I gotta maintain it.
but anyways, they're actually still holding up good. I mean, mud-wise, so far, knock on wood, nothing. Roughness, all over the place. We started this week since the pit opened up over to Danville. We've been having a chance to haul some material to help start covering up some of the deepest potholes and stuff. So we started up around Brown Hill in that area and coming down through there. We ended up touching up that end. We haven't really been grading too deep yet because it seems like towards the afternoon they start to sweat pretty good. So we've been just trying to cuff them off a little bit. So we've been at that. Today we started over on Porter Brook roadside and covered up some of those. Besides that, I don't know if anybody saw one of our dump trucks, but we got one truck down right now. It was out at the town line over towards Walden and Hardwick way. Pearlie was heading that way, and all of a sudden the truck locked up and said it had no transmission. So we got it back to the shop the following day. Lloyd from Bootsy's Garage came out and reset the computer and stuff, but it's still over at the garage. So it's either wire that's rotted somewheres, or it could be the transmission computer module. So that's just sitting there for now.
It seems like we always
more
have
stuff.
one truck down.
Yeah, pretty
Anyway.
much.
And when all our rigs are newer than 8 years old.
That one's 7.
Oh,
So that one's on its way out next year. But that truck this year has had a lot of electrical stuff,
okay.
you know, with the sensors and this and that. So.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, Vermont winters are not necessarily the best thing for electronics.
Right, no, I know.
And everything's full of them now, so.
Right,
So besides that, of course, cold patching, it seems like once or twice a week. Every time it rains or water starts running down through, of course, then we got to go back through and redo all the coal patching again. But hopefully hot mix plants will open up here in another few more weeks and we can get the good stuff, make them last. But besides that, we've been helping Kenny out down at the lift station on 14. He's been having some issues with that. So hopefully we can get that resolved this week.
And is that, I think I maybe talked to you
that
about
was the other lift station. That was the one on Buffalo Street we're having problems with.
Oh, so there's 2 of them that you've been struggling with. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So besides that, that's about it.
Questions for Tom? All right. Next is Police Department report given by Aaron Cochran.
All right, well, our cars have taken it hard this winter as well. One of the officers got hit about a month ago, head on. Luckily, it was a slow speed, so that car just got fixed. And we took it to get fixed the same day. Somebody backed into one of our other cars and caused damage to that, so we're waiting to get that one fixed, but we got it patched up for now. But
maybe you need to get cars in brighter colors.
Maybe pink, I don't know, maybe that neon green or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, so ours have taken it hard this winter as well. We've received quite a few applicants for the open dispatcher's position. Those are coming in quite steadily, so.
And do you have a deadline for that?
We don't. We listed it as open until filled.
Okay.
So we're just collecting those.
Going through them as they come in. Okay.
Kind of as, I guess, as they start to slow down, we'll start taking a look at, when we'll regroup to look them over and interview and so on. But right now it's a pretty steady pace of them coming in, so.
That's nice.
I wish we could get as many police officer applicants as what we get for that job.
Many people with experience?
About half, probably, yeah.
That's good.
I looked in today, I sent an email. We got an email from the Chiefs Association. The Agency of Agriculture is teaming up with law enforcement to do Creamy from a Cop, which is a campaign they did last year. They did a pilot program with 5 police departments around the state. They provide coupons for police officers to give out to community members. And the Agency of Agriculture will work with the area Creamy stands to redeem those coupons and so on. So I reached out to them today, thought it might be something neat that we could do here, and it would help out, it's helping out the farmers as well with that whole program. So I didn't get information back from Scott Waterman yet, but they want everybody signed up by April 15th, so I'm sure he'll get back to me within a few days. But my understanding is there's no cost to us. They're going to provide everything and deal with it. They have a budget through the Agency of Agriculture for that particular program. So they're trying to get as many police departments to sign off on as possible throughout the state. So that doesn't mean everybody can meet at the PD for a Creamy every day.
Oh, never mind then.
Officer Mitchell is working on the grant program for the new year for Governor's Highway Safety Program. They're going to call it, there's been a lot of change over the years, they're going to call it Behavioral something program. I don't know how that works into driving a car, but that's what they're going to call it. So they're changing the name of it. They also said there's going to be less money this year, but they haven't told us how much less, so we don't know that. But some interesting facts when we were working on the grant, when he was working on the grant, we found that this year over last year, there was a 6.5% increase in crashes. Some of that could be to the winter weather that we had as well, but there was an increase of crashes over the last year.
That's in Hardwick? In Hardwick,
yep. There's a 55% increase in DLS, criminal DLS arrests.
So wait, 6%?
6.5% increase in
how many crashes?
Motor vehicle crashes. He was giving me numbers, so I don't know percentage-wise, as he was doing his grant application, but yeah,
55% is a lot if you had 1,000.
That's a lot.
But 55% ain't a lot if you have 3.
Right.
That's why I was asking.
Right. Percentage-wise, your DLS arrests We'd rather not see them go up. But the other spectrum, or the other end of the spectrum is that they're getting caught, which was my focus as when we reorganized, you know, our personnel and so on. As we did, I wanted to put the officers back onto the streets. And when you put them back onto the streets, you're going to start seeing increases, you know, in arrests and so on. It doesn't necessarily mean there was more crime, but that the crime is detected better because they're out there. So the way I'm looking at it is it's working what my intentions were there. So, and there's a 20% increase in the DUI arrests as well this last year. 20%? 20% increase, yeah. And again, the texting and driving campaign will start actually next week. It's a 4-day campaign where they're going to be actively looking for people driving, talking on the phone or texting, etc., handheld devices.
100 tickets written.
So, yeah, I expect we're going to get, we were talking about this today, actually. We will be planning that throughout the summer as well. Different campaigns to do that. Not that the state is doing that, but we will be here. I've sat in front of the school and watched, when I was picking up my kids, and watched people driving through. I was in a personal vehicle, so they didn't know I was there. And yeah, 1 out of every 3 cars is on their phone. So, so we'll be coming up with ideas to enforce that.
But it's totally legal if your phone talks through your car.
As long as you're not touching your phone. If you have to touch
your car, though.
You can touch your car.
Yeah. Anyway, just pointing it out.
You can touch your car.
And you have to.
You can't touch your phone.
Well, unfortunately, you know, distracted driving is distracted driving.
Right, exactly.
But
Touching isn't the issue.
the phone thing is definitely needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and you know, as far as the crashes go, that's difficult to prove that was the reason why, but that is also a possibility as to an increase in crashes as there's more and more technology.
I got hit on the interstate years ago, and it was because the guy reached for a sandwich.
Right.
But that wasn't nowadays, if he had his phone, it would have been an incident, a phone incident. It was a distracted drive. It wasn't even, at that point, it wasn't even called distracted driving. It was an accident.
Right.
But it was distracted driving is what it was, so.
A lot of the vehicles now, you can actually dial the phone on the screen, you know, when you're on your vehicle.
Mine, all you gotta do is hit the button and talk and all that.
I don't see how, you know, you're still having to take your eyes away from the road. And
that's exactly my point.
It's legal, so whatever.
But if you are talking on the phone, your mind isn't on the road.
Right. But if you're holding your phone and looking at your map, it's legal.
You shouldn't have started
If you're using your GPS app, it's legal.
No,
because it's a handheld device.
Hold it in your hand.
Can't have it in your hand at all.
Well, okay, so it's on your dash.
If it's on your dash, hooked to your dash, that's fine. Yeah. As long as it's not hooked to your windshield, because if it's hooked to your windshield, then it's obstructed windshield.
So, clean, cut and dry right there.
Welcome to our world.
You can be on the dash.
You can be on the dash.
Hanging down.
You stick it up, it can't be hanging down.
It's a good thing these all make sense. I like that.
I don't make them.
No.
It's not funny, because it is a real problem.
The distracted driving is a real problem. That's a serious issue, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. All right. So we done exploring the world of cell phones right now? Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
We've muddied that up enough so you'll never have a successful ticket now.
Right. All right. Thank you. Next, we have a report from Carol Plant about what Hardwick Area Restorative Justice has been up to, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I brought Lee King with me. She's our reentry specialist. I just want to start first by acknowledging Wendy Tanner died recently, and she was a longtime volunteer in our programs. She served on the advisory board and with our pre-charge panels and on our reentry services. So that was a big blow for me personally. I've known her for a long time, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I've got a lot to say about safe driving, but just to start off, we're on track with our budget. We're meeting our grant deliverables. We're not as busy with referrals as we have been in past years, but this is kind of normal in the restorative justice world. I did pick up 2 new cases today from the police, which is good, so that, and Aaron assured me that we'll probably start getting more of those cases as spring rolls around.
Is there seasonality to it? Is that what you're saying?
There is. There's a seasonality, and it's the type of cases. So we have conversations sometimes about it's what the type of crime is. So we don't, for pre-charge, we don't take all types of cases. Okay. So it depends on what it is. But this is normal around the state. Other centers, it's the same sort of thing. You just don't know what the pattern is going to look like. With that, there are a couple of new programs that we initiated based on conversations that Aaron and I have had. And one is safe driving pre-charge referrals. So rather than somebody has a crash, right? And so rather than that person necessarily, if they just were not driving well, rather than issuing them a ticket, there's an opportunity now for the officer to refer it just to come to our safe driving program. And so I facilitate the program once every quarter, and it's through the Governor's Highway Safety Program. It's a grant that goes to the Community Justice Network of Vermont, and then justice centers that want to offer this do it in their community, and I feel like it's really important to do that. It addresses all distracted driving charges, and so this is another opportunity to use this program for other types of infractions that they find. So if they do have, there are a lot of people who are getting charges just for cell phone use. They can do a referral into our program with a component of it being that they take the safe driving program. There is a $50 fee for the program, which will support us continuing to do it, but I think it's going to be a great way to help people recognize the decision-making process that led them to giving themselves permission to do this distracted driving. And with hearing those statistics about how things have, problems that have increased, it's great that we're able to do this. And I encourage all of you, if any of you want to take the class for free, you can come and do it. It's 2 evenings, 6 hours total on a Monday and a Tuesday evening from 5:30 to 8:30, and the next opportunity is May 5th and 6th. You just need to call me and sign up for it, and I'll let you take it for free.
The officer makes his choice? So if the officer makes a choice to go that route instead of writing me a ticket, do I get points on my license if he writes me a ticket?
No, it goes through, the officer refers it to me, and in statute, the police chief has the option of saying yes or no. And then if you complete successly, then that ticket is destroyed. So you would have no.
I'm trying to figure out what the difference between me getting stopped for distracted driving and her getting stopped for distracted driving. Why we wouldn't have the same penalty?
Because you get the ticket and I get the class.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Exactly how I'm thinking it's going to go.
Well, so there's differences that from our standpoint we're going to look at is what else do you have on your record? Have you had multiple driving offenses or tickets, in the past 6 months to a year that you're just not getting the point?
Well, we just had a conversation about how this is a major problem.
Yeah.
It leads right into some people are going to get a slap on the hand, some people are going to get a ticket.
Right.
Well, but the interesting thing would be which one is the bigger deterrent?
Well, I don't argue that. I think that a 2-night class is a bigger deterrent because I would pay the fine before. I want the ticket because I don't want to go to 2 nights. Take your class, but I shouldn't have that choice is my thing, you know what I mean? My thinking is.
Well, you wouldn't, Aaron would.
Right.
Right. Oh, good point.
So some of the feedback that we get from the class, it's interactive and it's restorative in that we ask people to be self-reflective about their decision-making process, the choices that they made. We also help them, and the same thing we do with all of our restorative programs is help them understand what the negative impacts are for what they did on people and the community. So the learning process So Danny, for you, I would say send Danny to that, because I would want you to have that experience of like thinking about those things that you might not have otherwise.
Well, I understand, I'm not saying what
Yeah.
you're doing is a bad thing, I'm saying that the guy making the decision, I'm not good with someone else making a decision.
Because it's subjective to some degree. So the way, in terms of our pre-charge, the regular referrals that Aaron does with us, it's the same thing. If it's a first-time contact with law enforcement, or if it's somebody who really takes responsibility from the beginning, they know they made a mistake, then it's more likely to come to us. So that, I think, is part of the discretion that Aaron and the officers use when they're referring into our programs, which to me is appropriate, because it does give them the opportunity to not have a criminal record and learn something from it. So,
and we're finding that, well, this is nothing new, everybody's seen it, that the simple fact of giving a ticket that usually doesn't get paid, and then they go down the road of losing a license, and then, trying to get to work, and just compounding tickets, and the fees for these traffic tickets are ridiculous. The fees that they've set on these tickets, they're absolutely ridiculous for, a working person that's trying to drive every day. So they made a mistake. So, like with many other things, they're now looking towards education pieces to try and educate them to make better decisions and so on. And, the reward would be the fact that if you completed it, you wouldn't have anything on your record for that.
So just for an example, what is the ticket for driving?
For cell phone? I gotta look it up.
Oh, okay.
It compounds, so once you have one conviction, it doubles. So to try and keep that first conviction off your record is big. It compounds tremendously, and the points compound as well. So
you get a fine and points if you got a ticket.
Yeah, they were serious.
That's what I just asked.
What's that?
I just asked that. If you get points you get points if you get a ticket, you don't get points if you go to her program.
Correct. Because you would be issued a ticket anyways, and that ticket would be basically pending until you completed the program. Once the program was completed, then we would amend that ticket and void it. So you'd have the opportunity to not have to pay a fine and the points.
I would, because it would be my first interaction. Pretty sure that's not, I've never had that option.
Then our hopes is that the education piece is that we wouldn't have to deal with that, individual again or whatever.
I totally understand. I like things to be fair.
I'm not sure everybody.
I'm not sure that is run in a manner in which it's fair.
Aaron, this is a tangent, but I'd like to go back to something in your report where you said that there's a 55% increase in the DLS. Is there any way to check to see how much of that, how many of these people who got caught are multiple times for the same person? Thinking of the scenario that you just put forward of somebody gets a ticket, doesn't pay it, can't pay it, loses his license, has to get to work, and is really caught in a downward vicious cycle. Will these statistics, can you break these out so you see how many people are involved in these 55%?
Not really. We know once, so some of your DLSs are for the fact that they've had 3 prior tickets. So some of them, that's the reason that he gets to be criminal, which is a citation versus a traffic ticket. So individually, but each one could have different circumstances behind it.
And remember that the statistics about the big increases, it's hard to have a context for that without an absolute number.
And that's why I was asking, is there any way to get a sense of it? Because it really reinforces your argument for, you want to go for education rather than for a ticket.
exactly, for the initial, and especially for the initial charge before they lose their license. So while Aaron is reading the phone over there, I'll just mention that in Addison County, so I work 10 hours a week for the Addison County Restorative Justice Services doing their reparative programs, and their state's attorney decided he wanted to do a pilot program restorative program for criminal DLS charges because, and from my perspective, it's a poverty issue, right? So somebody gets a charge, they lose their license, they keep driving because they need to go to work and they can't pay the fines and they keep accumulating these DLS charges. So he wants to put an end to that, find a way for people to find a way out of that. There is a program through the Attorney General's Office, Court Diversion Program, where they can, to some degree, address that, where they have, if the fines are a certain number of years old, they get, they don't have to pay the whole fine. So it can be like they just pay $30 if they're more than like 7 years old. They also work with people to figure out how to get their license back. With these criminal suspensions and these criminal tickets, they're not the same type of opportunity. So we're piloting this program to help them find a way to get their license back. And the state's attorney doesn't care how long it takes, but we do a restorative component to it, but we're also staying in touch with them and doing some level of case management to help them figure out how they're going to pay, how they're going to get crash done, all of the things that they need to do, and there's a list of them to avoid more DLS charges. So we're seeing a little bit of success, and I wasn't even going to talk about that because it's a pilot for the state. No other state's attorney is doing this, but my hope is that when we see some success with it, we're going to try to introduce it in Caledonia County and Orleans County. So, did you have an update on that?
Yeah, cell phone, Danny, is 200 for first offense and 2 points, and up to 505 points for second offense for cell phone. So,
and they're talking about increasing those fees in this session.
Right. And, you know, somebody has to make a decision as to whether or not somebody goes to this, or whether they go, you know, they don't give them that option. But we have information that nobody else has as to how many tickets they've had previously, and information that we have to look at. You know, my hope is that this will be an opportunity for anybody that wants to go through it. But I also understand that we have people driving through here that may be from the southern part of the state that may not want to come up here to that class for 2 nights a week, and they're just going to pay the ticket. So, you know, there's differences there as well.
Paying the ticket's easy. The points on your license,
they accumulate.
Yeah, they multiply.
Yeah.
I think it's another poverty issue.
So,
if you can afford a brand new car, then you can just interact with your car.
If you don't want to get it down to DLS, don't drive. That's how you don't get DLSs. When you don't have a license, you don't drive.
So one last update around the DLS thing is that I was contacted by Chip Troiano about this, and he wanted, because they're having conversation in committee with the legislature about using community service instead of paying some of these fines, and my feeling about that is that that's not appropriate. Like, I think that in a lot of ways that can cause a hardship for people, and I don't see the equating doing what people would perceive as free work for the town or for the state as an appropriate way to manage that. So, but I did suggest to him a restorative process, which is that learning piece, and it wouldn't cost them anything to do that piece of it. So I'm ready to move on to the next thing on my list. So the other new, I think it's great to, you know, get some education about what's happening with these programs. And most importantly, like when Aaron and I do actually have conversations about some of these things, we make some progress. So there's a second program that we just started, which is more formalized, a conflict assistance program. So this is for people who have like a neighbor dispute, and they go to the police and they have a complaint, and they file a complaint, but there's not enough there for a criminal investigation or a criminal charge. There's no proof. They can't do anything with it. So I wrote up, and I can leave some copies of my report and this description of this program with you. It's basically, they refer it to me and Lee, and we can talk to them about what's happening for them and offer them either facilitated conversation or mediation, and to some degree, mostly at no cost to them. But if it were mediation and it was going to be a longer term thing, then we'd probably have to charge something for it. But we talked about this at our last advisory board meeting, and I just wrote it up, and it's being implemented, which is really fantastic. And I think the other positive thing about that is that there are people who feel like they have become victims in some way. There's been some offense against them, and if there's no recourse legally for them, it at least gives them the opportunity to talk to somebody and have them, be allowed to tell their story. And for some people, that's all they really want. If we ever can build up enough of a budget, we might be able to provide some funding to people if they've lost something, if they need to pay an insurance deductible or something like that. Right now, we don't have the finances to do that, but that's kind of the intention behind it. I think that what's going to be positive about that is that I think the police are going to look good if they do these referrals, because it's going to give them the credit for providing a resource, some other opportunity for people to feel satisfied when they come with a complaint, even if nothing can happen with law enforcement.
I think you should take referrals from the zoning office too.
You know, at one point we were on the animal ordinance thing, whatever the protocol was there, so there's a place for us. So I'm happy to entertain any of those sorts of things, to have those.
Came to mind and facilitated this discussion. In fact, people have come to the board meetings before, was smoke from the campfire in a village, which is not illegal, and we found out, can't be regulated, etc. So that sporadically we'll get noise complaints, neighbors that necessarily don't want to listen to the other neighbors' type of music or whatever may have you. So the kind of thought that maybe this might be another
better forum.
And maybe make some progress there. So
that's great.
And ideally to improve relationships between neighbors. So
You want that job, you're welcome to.
So, I love what I do, actually. So, and sometimes I've had referrals from the town managers in the past too. And sometimes even if you just call them and say, we're interested in having a conversation with you about this thing that's been going on with your neighbor, the problem stops, which can be effective as well. So recently, 2 more things from me, and then I'll turn it over to Lee. There's interest in the middle school. I had a teacher come to me and have a conversation about hopefully establishing a peer-led restorative process in the middle school, which definitely interested in doing that. So I'm going to schedule another meeting at the school with the principal up there and just talk about what's possible. And so we might be doing that. And then there is an opportunity for us to apply for a grant to do a legal clinic, and I haven't done all the research on it, but it would be a small grant that we could pay a stipend for some local attorneys to show up for, a 3-hour block of time once a month or once every other month, where people who needed the service could come and get some free legal advice. So I'm looking into that. And the last thing is that Aaron told me that as soon as he was done with hiring, he was going to schedule a date where we're going to bring free lunch to the officers, and so that we can have some time to just talk to them about the programs that we do, because we just don't have enough time to connect with them and get feedback from them about what is working and what's not, and what they would like to see, if anything, to be different. So I'll let Lee tell about the reentry stuff, and then any questions that you have, we can answer any questions.
So my name is Lee King, and in the fall I started as the reentry coordinator. So mainly that means I'm supporting people coming out of prison into our community. And the 2 ways that I mostly do that is through the COSA program and through navigation services. And the COSA program is gathering a group of volunteers to meet with staff and a core member coming out of prison into this community for at least a year to build up support and accountability in that process. So circles of support and accountability is what it stands for. And the one-on-one reentry navigation services can look like a lot of different things depending on the person. I can help someone write a resume, apply for jobs, look for housing, give occasional rides. So it can be really individualized. So We closed out a case in our COSA program due to someone going back into prison, and we're still working with him, but it can't be an official COSA anymore. We briefly had someone come into the community based on a medical furlough because he was given a terminal diagnosis and was released from prison into care here in Hardwick. And unfortunately, he did pass away pretty quickly after arriving here, so we're not working with him. And then for navigation services, we're trying to build up the referrals to get more people working with the Justice Center for one-on-one navigation services. And the two ways that we've been doing that right now is that I went into the facility at the St. Johnsbury Correctional with another reentry coordinator to meet with people who are interested in navigation services all around Vermont. And so just promoting what we can do within the prison for people who will be released. And then we also, through probation and parole, were able to send out a letter to anyone still under supervision of Department of Corrections within our area, promoting our services, what we can offer. And we've gotten a few calls back from that. So that's what I've been working on.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any questions for restorative justice folks while they're here? I mean, we've had quite a conversation, I feel, while we've...
I had one thing we talked about with the parklet thing. In the parklet, there was if the town wanted to terminate the parklet or there was conflict between the town and the parklet owner, that it would be referred to these guys, I think, for resolution. Was it?
That was a draft ordinance that was in
right, a draft ordinance. And so, if I have it right, it makes sense for us to discuss it, whether that makes sense. I don't have the ordinance with me.
I think
so you're saying you would like to include in that ordinance a place where that was a place for conflict resolution? Is that what
It was in the ordinance, and it seemed a little unusual to me, and so I just...
Oh, it's in there?
It was in the... Okay, so just a bit of background for you. I know it's bringing in this on you, but basically we're going to talk about later tonight. There's an idea to create parklets within parking spaces downtown, and as part of the people who proposed that, gave us a proposed ordinance that we're looking at now. And in that proposal, it says that I don't know quite how it's worded because I don't have it in front of me, but basically if the parklet's there and there's some kind of conflict with the town, that instead of it just being terminated, it would have to go to I think it was the Restorative Justice Board, I think is what it said, right?
That's what the draft said.
That's what the draft said.
Wow.
And so what we were wanting, to me that seemed a little odd, but I'm not familiar with what you do. Did that make sense to you?
It definitely makes sense. What's odd about it is that no one contacted us to talk to us about what that might look like and to include it in there, right? Because it can be a capacity issue depending on how, I mean, if you just keep adding, like, send it to restorative justice, then it becomes a capacity issue for us. So, no, but I'm happy to learn more about it and see what they're proposing in that, and it might be good to, to let me see it, to just understand the language and maybe make some suggestions about how to do that. Okay. Yeah.
So it is on our, I think, item 3 on our agenda, if you want to stick around to learn more about it, and we can also provide you with copies of...
Well, yeah, if we get to that
place,
we can meet with, we know where our office is.
Okay, we should do that.
Well, I think we can find her.
That sounds good.
Last thing I'll say is that we have our quarterly advisory board meeting on Monday at 4 down in the memorial room, so if anybody wants to come to that, there'll be more details. It's going to be some of this, but more details about the numbers and what we're doing right now. And I will leave these copies for you. It includes the numbers plus the new conflict assistance program description. And how late is when is that number 3 going to come up?
Well, we have a number, it's going to be a few minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll stay for it just so I can, I might as well since I'm here.
Free entertainment.
It's what? Free entertainment?
Yeah. Well, unless Tom's charging.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for coming and talking to us. Next up is item number 1. Alberta has brought to our attention applications for Class 1 and Class 2 liquor licenses. We have for consideration tonight, first-class liquor license for RBI Hardwick LLC doing business as Positive Pie for outside consumption. Something about outside consumption sounds a little, like outside and consumption to me means bringing in, kind of, so anyway. And then the second one is Scale House Restaurant. And then second-class licenses for Hardwick Village Market, Buffalo Mountain Co-op, and Walgreens Eastern doing business as Rite Aid.
I'll make a motion that we approve the first-class liquor licenses and second-class licenses as Eric read.
Second?
So I was asked, do we have any concerns or issues? Have we had any with any of these folks?
Any problems with any of these?
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
What's the outside, where are they gonna be serving outside, do you know?
So they actually have that, when you're looking at Positive Pie, they actually have to the left, they have the paved, pavers.
Not the whole park, right? They have.
Right, they just have like a section of the park that gets broken off.
It's not actually,
outside
it's on that side. They've done it before.
Yes, yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the liquor licenses, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Alberta.
I'm not shy.
Oh, I'm the one who's keep dragging us down here, I think. Next up, but we're gaining time here.
Right here.
Well, we just did, and we're gonna gain some more. Next up is Vermont All-Terrain Vehicle Sportsmen's Association, VASA, request to V-Trans to open up Vermont Route 14 in Hardwick between Cary Road and Macville Road for VASA use. And this was brought to us, not by you.
No, but it should have been.
But the letter came, yeah, so you explain away.
Yeah, so I'm not a selectman right now, I'm the executive director of VASA for a few minutes. So we have a master license agreement with V-Trans to use sections of state highway for connector trails. It's a new process, we're just entering into our second season, and through that process, VASA submits an application to V-Trans. In this particular one, the municipal support was not included, so V-Trans behind in issuing these permits to us, so we rattled their cage, so they took it upon themselves to put a new person in charge of it, and he's doing a fine job, so he reached out to the town. It actually should have been the club that came to the town, which they planned on doing in a couple of weeks. So essentially what it is it's from Macville Road to Cary Road, and it's currently we use a section of it already, but we don't go all the way down that far. So we're going to increase it a little bit, but it's essentially half of it's being used now currently.
And just to clarify, that whole section is outside, that's state highway.
Well,
and they're
from Buffalo Mountain Road to the state highway. From Macville Road to Buffalo Mountain is state highway, but it's under town jurisdiction.
But, okay. Okay, so for some reason,
technicality,
I had the impression that it was a V-Trans decision and they were just asking for town input.
Oh, they are. So essentially, we have an ordinance in town that does support some limited road use for ATVs.
Right, there's a list of roads, but those are roads that the town controls completely.
Completely. Which I also have that with me because we do need to make a couple of small amendments to that as well.
I thought you said this is going to be short.
It is. No reason for it to be long. And it doesn't need to be acted on necessarily tonight either. As I said, this kind of came up to the town in the backwards. I didn't realize it was going to be on the agenda until I got my agenda. So it's a simple document. It just has a municipal approval at the bottom. It says our application, says where it is, what we're doing, and it just says, be it resolved that the town of Hardwick, as represented by the select board, is in full support of the allowed use of Vermont State Highway referred herein. And then certification if someone needs to sign it and certify to do so. So if there's an issue that we need to explore why the town doesn't want to do it, then we can come back or we can
Danny, the only thing that comes to my mind is suppose somebody's out there in that very short stretch and there is a tragic accident and somebody is seriously hurt or killed. Is that Aaron's problem or is that the state police's problem?
Well, it's neither of their problems, it's the person who had the accident.
Yeah.
But it's no different than if it was a bicycle, a horse, a lawnmower, a motor vehicle.
Whose time is it going to take up? It's
I
going to
mean,
be
yeah,
Aaron's. It's going to be Aaron's.
it's no different than if there was a motormobile accident on that section.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't change any.
If they're on any of the other towns.
Right. This puts no additional liability on the town. It's simply V-Trans's way of making sure the town's aware that they're going to open the road.
And does that make a connection?
Yes. I don't have a map with me, but yes, it's a major connection to all of our trail system.
So what's the change? You said that it was already, you already have one section.
Well, because there's a bridge down by the lift station we want to eliminate. We go out to the lift station now and across that old rickety, very dangerous bridge that has some
I was
erosion
thinking you
issues.
should repair that bridge because I could use it if it was in better shape.
If somebody wanted to, contribute something once in a while, we repaired it and built it twice.
All right.
And our feeling is it'd be just as easy to eliminate it.
Okay.
And we, honestly, most people won't go all the way. They'll turn onto Buffalo, onto Buffalo Mountain Road, Mountain Trail.
Oh, and they're just connecting from the Woodbury Rail Trail?
Woodbury Rail Trail, Buffalo Mountain Trail, and Mountainville Road are our three trails.
Yeah.
Up behind your house are the trails?
Yeah, come down Mountainville Road. Right now, we go up Marshall Street and down Roundabout Street. So that's why we need to amend our ordinance, because we want to come down Mountainville Road the other way from my house to 14. Which I'm sure all the folks on Marshall Street will be happy about, although we don't have any complaints from them.
So Marshall Street, though, would still remain open for that?
Well, it could,
Yeah.
but it doesn't need to. And we
From
can
an
address
ordinance
the
point of view, it would.
Well, we could take it out, that's what I'm saying, if that was what you wanted to do.
Or it could stay open.
I mean, the only reason, because when we formed this club 18 years ago, there was no opportunity for state highway access. And we were already stretching it, because the 90-degree crossing was already not really 90 degrees.
You mean out in front of Ray's?
Yeah.
Well, they were
right,
doing a little
right.
jig.
So that's why we chose to go up over Marshall Street, because we were stretching the 90-degree crossing, because we actually went into where the little garage is there, the shop now, the UPS shop.
Store, yeah.
We went into that driveway and went down to the end of that driveway and just cut. Still wasn't 90, but it was.
You were going to be quick.
So that's what it's on the agenda. If it's something you don't want to do tonight, we can revisit it another night.
So I'm still unclear on the difference between what it was and what it is now, just the.
Well, it'll be from Buffalo Street to, it'll be the state highway part of it.
So, but now you're going from Cary Road up to
Mattville Road.
Now you want to do that, but no.
Right now, we're going from Marshall Street to Buffalo Mountain Street. Buffalo Street. Buffalo Street.
Marshall Street to
So it's just almost straight across.
Well, it's.
Buffalo Street is where the storage shed.
Right, storage shed.
Right, okay. So now you're doing a sort of not quite 90 degree.
Well, now we're not doing it 90 at all, because we don't go to that yard. So last year, we were using that section of road right there.
So you're using
No.
From Marshall Street down to
Buffalo Street.
To Buffalo Street, okay.
So the addition is from Buffalo Street to Cary Road. Would be new.
It's not going to maintain the bridge I want to bike over.
Yeah.
It is a little
Wasn't
bit
great for
touch and
bikes.
go.
No, it needs to go. It needs to be removed for a bunch of reasons, and it's.
It is really rough. No, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, we get 50 ATVs a year that probably ride that trail.
Right.
I mean, it goes right up my driveway, so I know how many. So.
I move we approve the request.
I think you should move that we, you should move that we make this resolution.
Okay.
What is the?
I move
That what Danny just read.
that we make a resolution that we are supporting in full the allowed use of Vermont state highways referred in this application.
There we go.
referred to in this application.
So this is the application right here?
Somebody second it. And we'll revisit the ordinance another time.
Yeah.
We're already a half an hour behind.
Right.
Sorry. We almost
Second it.
caught up and then it slipped away.
Are you in a mood to second that?
I seconded it.
You did already?
Yeah.
That was quiet. All right, so, I mean, I'll just throw out that I think that, yeah, it's good. Any more discussion? All in favor of approving the resolution for use of ATVs on that section of Route 14, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that was 3 ayes and an abstention. The motion carries. Thank you, Danny. And so can you bring that other?
Yeah, the
another
ordinance, and
time?
the only change is really just, like I said, from Macville, from my driveway up to my driveway the other way, that's all, my Macville Road, but we'll bring it back. Sign that there. That'll get V-Trans, that will get them working.
Did we get some signs, Danny? Since it's gonna be a long stretch down 14.
Oh, there's actually a whole sign package that we put up with V-Trans, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, there'll be, V-Trans puts up signs for
You guys have a
motors,
copy of this
signs
for-
for the ATVs.
Do you have a copy of this for minutes?
No, he can have that.
can make it.
Amanda, let me sign it, and then Amanda can have it, just send me an electronic one.
Okay. Great, thank you. Next up is the parklet concept. Legal review, ordinance consideration, and additional information. That's a lot, wow. So we have, I know we have Sven Olson here to talk about parklet, and I don't know, other people may be here to talk about parklet as well. So parklet, we talked about this last time, and sent it out for legal review to the town's lawyer, and came back with we should do more due diligence. Also in the interim, Lucian did look up the actual process by which the town needs to approve ordinances, which we had not been fully cognizant of at our last meeting. And so there is a process by which that needs to happen that has other longer time frame built into it. And what else has happened in the intervening time? Anything? Nothing.
Oh, I think, I asked that, because the lawyer was saying that we should get feedback from various parties about, about this parklet before we just jump right into it. And so I asked Sean to give Aaron and Tom copies of it so they could, assuming you didn't have it before, maybe you already had it, just so we could get feedback. I think there'd be the obvious people to give us some feedback on it.
And we also got feedback from you. Sean reached out to our insurance end of the world.
You want me to comment? I can, you just tell me.
Yeah, just comment on that. That would be great. Or
So,
whatever you want.
we did reach out to, it's from all League of Cities and Towns, and the representative we work with is Jim Carrion. So they obviously they're representing and working with other communities that have gone forward with the parklet concept, whether that was on a trial basis or via an established ordinance. And the league does not have an opinion against this. What they really hone in on is if you want to go forward, as you were just talking about, we want to make sure sorry, let me start over. You can do the trial phase without necessarily having an ordinance, or you can go the ordinance phase. We obviously have had some discussions at the last meeting about the draft ordinance. The key points from the league's perspective was they are not opposed to this. What they want to make sure is rock solid that however we move forward, if there's a business involved, then that business would be carrying the associated insurances. And what they recommend for levels of insurance would be $2 million for general and $4 million for aggregate, and traditionally you hear numbers of $1 and $3 million in those areas. We would obviously enter into a contract, and it would be a hold harmless contract. In a nutshell, the business is the one that is in control of everything having to do with that space, even though it exists on town property. So using a parking space as an example, we would, with these agreements, and this is using examples of what they are doing in other communities, so Montpelier is the primary example, being close to us geographically. They actually will go forward with setting up the hold harmless, set the contract. Whoever is doing this as the business, occupying the space, assuming it is a physical piece of infrastructure, they're doing the ownership of that, the maintenance, the put up, the takedown. They basically are taking all the costs associated with using that space. Just a couple of other issues here that are germane to the discussion. Actually, the chief and I, when we were looking at the crosswalks, we also were just trying to check on what spaces we've got in certain parts of this village district, and it was interesting what I was thinking about if we were to move forward on the parklet concept is, and obviously the issue that comes up on this discussion is, how do you have that protective barrier, if you will, between the traffic and the people that might be using the space? And I immediately was thinking that you might go to like a New Jersey barrier system where you've got a hard physical boundary. And actually Jim clarified with me, they actually don't want a situation like that. They will go with a inverted concrete pillar. This is going to sound crazy, but the feedback from the insurer was we go with a planter or a concrete pillar so that you don't necessarily damage a car if it were to hit it. And again, I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but that
Don't worry about the people.
That was the comment. Well, I need to add to this.
People are there.
With the example in, using Montpelier as an example, if anybody has seen some of the things they've done there, there's variations on this theme, of course, and in Montpelier what they do is a raised deck system. So you're getting people up from, a little bit up off the street area. Another example of how you can, have a little bit of a barrier is you can use the plastic-filled water barriers as another example. Sometimes you'll see those in crash zones. Whatever would be decided on this, it would fall back on, there's a standard on this. It's manual on uniform traffic control devices. So as has been, I think some of the issues that have already come up, the location itself can't create a hazard, whether that's a travel, car moving hazard, or potentially puts a person using the parklet in a dangerous situation. If it were close to the crosswalk, how is it impacting sight distances for the crosswalk? These are some of the things you've got to evaluate. Just one other sideline, the business, if the town were to decide to do this, you can talk about some rental situations for the space. That's in a nutshell from the feedback that we got from the League of Cities and Towns. Should I go backwards and just hit a couple highlights from, the town's attorney's opinion, or is that enough? So, our business manager was nice enough to check in on this because I did miss the last meeting, so she kept the ball rolling on this. And there's a couple of bullet points from the town's attorney, that is Bill Davies, and that his opinion was just just go at a steady pace on this. Make sure it's deliberate and careful process, and in his words, involving Planning Commission, Select Board, Police Chief, Public Works for the safety concerns. Obviously, I think we've been working that process that we've been going, because obviously some of the initial review on this, per Sven's good work, he's reached out to zoning, and zoning then said, hey, let's get the Planning Commission in the game. So, we've been going at it at a measured pace, if you will. Bill did say, hey, reach out to the insurer, so I just gave you the feedback on that. I do need to say this, I asked the question and I said, look, if the business involved is going to be carrying the insurances, and I think people doing business will understand this, if we were to have an incident where somebody were hit by a car or some other accident that occurred, in the end, if there's an insurance, and even if we are shown as held harmless, somebody's going to sue, they're going to sue everybody involved. So you just need to be aware of that. So you got to really be thinking about strategically where are you going with this location, and making sure I know this is a dangerous statement, just, does it make sense? So a better way to say this is just, it has to be a safe setup, I guess is how I would say it from a practical perspective. Those are some of the highlights from what the attorney had relayed back through Casey, and Casey put together a couple bullet points on this. So those are just some of the perspectives on information collected from manager's office to assist in the process.
All right, so that's a lot of information. So just to maybe try to orient or focus the conversation. So in the past, we had, last time we had a discussion about creating an ordinance that would allow for businesses to apply to have a parklet in the town of Hardwick. And that was really kind of where we were going. So that ordinance would
address all those concerns.
Yes. That would, yeah, all those things would be in the ordinance, and then when somebody actually applied, then we could look at the specific location. And
it's exactly what we talked about last meeting.
yes, and
we decided to move forward.
And yes, except that we were unaware of the process too, right? So the process
we still don't have the draft ordinance
that's been reviewed. Well, we had, okay, so, but we also we would need to have a public hearing.
Before you have the draft ordinance?
No, we need the draft ordinance.
Yep.
Which we asked for at the last meeting.
Right, so we've been provided with the draft ordinance
We've been provided with an example of an ordinance.
Right.
We requested that it be sent to our attorney and be revised into an ordinance, draft ordinance for us to review.
Yeah.
And the decision was made not to do that. So
The decision was made that we needed more input, because that's what he said, that's what our attorney said.
He didn't provide he didn't necessarily provide what we asked for.
No. Again.
But he did provide input.
Which he does, but not necessarily useful input.
He was also given permission to not provide it.
Yeah. So, okay.
That wasn't a decision that Bill made. In his conversation, he was given permission to, well, hold that idea. Go back and read the email, Danny.
I read the email, but did you make that decision?
No, I didn't.
Make that decision?
Go back and read the email, and it's explained in there.
Well, I think last time when we met, the process was unclear.
All right, so
And we're saying we're going to go ahead,
what are
but
you
we
gonna
can't
do
just
now?
go ahead.
Right, so this is how do we proceed at this point?
Right.
Is that, so we have some more information about to advance this, to advance the idea of, to create an ordinance which creates a structure that addresses these things that Sean has laid out. We have to go through this process, which involves public hearing and adoption of the ordinance, and then the waiting period, and I don't remember what else is in there. Is that most of it, right? Okay, we'll have to look at it again. So we'd have to go through that. We also, I think it would be appropriate this time to hear from people who came to talk about this, because this may help spur some more interest and maybe drum up interest if we move on to this to a public hearing, maybe we'll get.
Well, we're not going to call a public hearing until we see a draft ordinance which is going to take time, which is
Puts
why
us
we
back.
asked for it.
Right. So we're back to that.
But I think in order for us to come up with one that we like, we need to have public input, sort of unofficial public input first, and then we'll take their ordinance and draft it if it goes to there, and then we'll have.
So we'll have. So
I think we should let people.
I think, yeah.
That's what
So
we can.
Christina,
Well,
can you state your name, please?
Christina Mickelson. I don't want to step on toes or anything, but Lucian is right. The process is really important, and Bill Davies knows the process to implement an ordinance. But I would not recommend having a general discussion without a proposed draft ordinance for people to review and talk about. The Montpelier ordinance is the best that we could find to use as a template, because they've already done the work. And I think the League of Cities and Towns probably worked with them to create their ordinance. The draft that you were provided with just took out the words Montpelier and put in Hardwick. So it's sort of completed work product that can be tailored to Hardwick, but may be the place to start with a discussion if you wanted to have public hearings. If you wanted to just say among yourselves, edit it where you see fit, and then propose it as the proposed ordinance, make it public, do the process for the hearing, bring people in to talk about it, and then do your process. Just for efficiency, I don't think you want to start talking to people without something for them to talk about. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've already said it, but you've submitted a proposed ordinance that I think is pretty much what we're working with. I think that's what you're saying.
It's a very complete draft that you guys can modify, you know, to make more Hardwick friendly. Like it does say Community Justice Center. We could call it something else or take that out entirely. It may not be, you know, there are pieces in there that may not be Hardwick appropriate. And you may want to say, yeah, we don't want this, or we do want this.
And also
before it goes to the public.
And just to address that for the benefit of the folks at, sorry, Sven Olsen, owner of the Scale House. Just to address that for the folks from community, from Restorative Justice, I think that was in the Montpelier ordinance and just sort of ended up in the draft anyway, so we didn't mean to jump ahead or put any burden on you guys. There wasn't any.
No, that makes total sense. In fact, when you started talking about, you know, having something that was presented, I immediately thought of Montpelier.
Yeah, it just was already in their draft, and I think that's how it ended. So certainly we weren't trying to, you know, load work on you guys without talking through it in advance.
So completely hearing Christina's point that, you know, to have a focused discussion, we really need to say, you know, this is the ordinance we're discussing. But I think Larry at least came to for this issue. So I'd like to hear from if anybody else has anything that they'd like to, any comments, any input, we'd like to hear it.
Well, as far as the ordinance, but I did come to, it was brought to my attention. My name's Larry Hamill.
Thank you.
And I operate businesses here in Hardwick. Some of my neighbors in town here, business neighbors, and some of my merchant tenants brought this to my attention. And they're very concerned about the placing. I'm very happy that the Scale House is there. It's a wonderful restaurant. I've eaten there. I enjoyed it. I'm glad there's a successful and good restaurant in town. I've been part of the downtown restoration process since 2005 when I bought the 1874 building. I've been dealing with the parking issues since then. Hardwick does have a real parking problem. It cost me $15,000 to take the ledge out from behind the 1874 building to provide parking for my tenants. And then when we finished the Hardwick Inn, we finished the inn, ready to open. We had to go to the zoning board and apply for a zoning permit to open. And their biggest question is, what am I going to do about parking in Hardwick? Well, you know, it's a little hard to deal with a building that's been there for 140 years. What am I going to do about it? You know, as far as the parking situation, there's been a lot of talk about the signage that was going to improve that never happened. The only parking spaces that I know of that have been added are the few on the bridge. There's 4 or 5 parking spaces on the bridge that have been added. The parking lot, the town parking lot.
Which one?
To the left of, I'll get there, to the left of the clip joint.
Yeah.
It's been loaded with crap since last fall. You know, the project's done, it's still loaded with crap. That's not a usable parking lot. And I have 3 businesses at 35 South Main Street, right next to the co-op. There's not a month goes by that I don't go down and collect the rent and hear stories about how long the co-op has had the whole street, 80 feet of the street, blocked off, sometimes until 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's a real problem for them, because they block it off, and I even went there one time and had an emergency at my building, and a woman ran upstairs and said, "You can't park here." It's like, excuse me, that didn't go over well. You know, if we're taking 2 spaces out in the middle, we fight for parking every day, all day, every day. The parking lot fills up. I see people park in my lot, Brochu's parking lot, go over to the co-op, they go over to the AT&T store. That irritates them. It irritates me. And it detracts from the people that are doing business in my building. You know, that's the concept of private property. You know, that property is there for my clients, my tenants. It's not the town parking lot. And it's not fair to shift the burden onto the private property owners by taking space out of the middle of town. This is not personal. I hope they do well, but unless you do something to add something to town physically, you can't just paint the lines closer together to make parking spaces, then I will oppose it at every turn. There you go.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else commenting about parklets?
Did you guys get a chance to read the parklet thing over? I know you mentioned some safety stuff, but I did not get a chance to.
Sean and I went down street yesterday, just looked over. Again, my concern is the placement. That's the most widely used crosswalk right there, coming from the swinging bridge. Sven had talked with me, and he said it originally wasn't looking at going the full 8 feet. He was talking more the 6 feet, which would bring it back a little, little from the highway. There again, I think until you see a proposal of the height of it, how much it's gonna block, how far it's gonna come out, and how far it's gonna block your line of sight there. It's hard to know.
I know, Aaron, that a van or my big pickup or anything else parked in that parking spot is likely to be more unsafe than what's going to be created by parking.
I mean, what I find
because if there's a van parked there.
Right. What I find interesting is that we've parked cars right up to crosswalks, and that hasn't been an issue. Somebody's safety hasn't been an issue, so that, but now, what's that?
You saying it hasn't been?
Right.
Well, we've had pedestrians hit in crosswalks possibly because the lines of sight are bad because there's not a bump out.
Right, but what we could have done.
Or the state law said you're supposed to have 8 feet clearance on the side of the sidewalk.
Right.
So it would lose probably 8 parking spaces downtown.
So I guess my point is that we weren't interested in the safety of people to move those parking spaces out until it became a business issue, and now it's an issue to lose parking space for financial reasons. That bothers me.
Right, when it has been actually a safety issue.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, I mean, I feel like our conversation is a little bit wide-ranging here because
I don't think we have a focus yet as to what it would look like,
Well, I think there are two things, and maybe we could distinguish. So one is that we could as a town have a parklet ordinance. That does not mean necessarily that there is a parklet going in front of the scale house. We could have an ordinance that says that it is possible to apply to the town for a parklet in the town of Hardwick.
And I thought that's what we were doing, but it's clearly not.
Well, but realistically, there's not many options for where someone would want to put a parklet, and there's only like really a few places downtown, I think, where people would want to do it, down Cottage Street or something. So, in some ways, it's a pretty limited amount of people that are going to be interested.
But somebody could want to put a parklet, for example, in the town-owned little sliver of land across the road from the scale house.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put one there, but somebody could want to put one there. Or somebody could want to put one in one of the town-owned, across the road from the village market in that parking lot.
I don't know. The scale house, I think the restaurant there prior to that was doing something on Friday nights, maybe.
They did a barbecue thing.
Yeah, across the road in that, in that little.
Which actually, the select board, I think, just allowed in a informal way. We didn't have an ordinance. There wasn't a process to come where somebody would come and say, this is.
They asked to do it, and we said, okay.
Yeah, they asked to do it, and we said, okay.
So this ordinance
was just cooking anyway over there, right? There was no seating or nothing or anything.
Right, they were just doing a barbecue over there.
Yeah. Was takeout? I don't remember. Was it takeout or what were they doing?
No, they were cooking for the restaurant.
And then trucking
across
the road?
Yeah, they were smoking food.
I remember that now.
You could smell it. It would smell good.
But it's
That'd have been distracting.
Is it going to be an every night occasion, or is it going to be a once a week, or is it going to be once a month?
So the ones, I'll just say the ones I've seen like in Montpelier, are ones that get it set up essentially for the summer. Like they're semi-permanent installations, right? Seasonal, but like they look good. They're, you know, built by somebody who knows a little bit about carpentry and looks like a place you'd want to sit down.
But they would occupy that place whether the scale house is opened or not.
Oh, in the case of, yes, so in the case of...
So again, folks,
we're getting ahead of the ordinance.
Every bit of this conversation is about a specific project, not about whether we want to conceptually have it available.
Right.
We're critiquing a specific location, and I don't think that's what we've been asked to do.
Right.
Well, but the issue about whether it's going to be available, whether it's going to be, I mean, I think in the ordinance, it implies that it goes in May and it comes out in October or something like that. So wherever it was,
have an ordinance.
Well, the ordinance as proposed.
The template that was given to us was only a template for us to go by. It wasn't what they've said. This isn't. They didn't come and say this is what we want. They said we're giving you some information, and this is the best information we have on what's available for an ordinance on the parklet.
Well, I was taking it that they were proposing that was the ordinance they were hoping for.
I don't think. Well, they gave us,
knowing that we would probably revise it.
Didn't want to, you know, be sort of impertinent and say, hey, we wrote a law for you. But that said, you know, I think a fair amount of time was spent crafting it and then taking feedback from Kristen Leahy, incorporating it, such that I think if you were to decide that this is the ordinance that we're going to put in front of the town, that it's fourth and goal, and that just as an aside, in reading the information Lucian sent over about the ordinances, is there is opportunities to modify it at the public hearing. So if there are a few tweaks and changes that come up through all of these conversations and then with folks from the town, there is an opportunity for you to put an ordinance in front of the town, have a public hearing, and then modify it, and then that is what gets voted in after a certain time period. Just, you know, in the event that there are, you know, so it doesn't have to be perfect before it goes in front. That's, figure I'd throw that out there.
Right. I mean, we aim to have it support
That said, I will, of course, you know, as much as I, you know, Danny, you're right, this sort of isn't about a specific location. I am happy to, you know, in parallel with all of this conversation about the parklet, I'm happy to be a guinea pig. If you'd like to do a temporary one summer trial to see how it goes, I'm happy to be your guinea pig for the summer if you want to do that in parallel with these discussions.
Would you be willing to provide us with some solid plans about what you envision this looking like?
I mean, I approach the bench. These aren't solid plans, but these are renderings that were done by an architect. Just to give an idea.
There you go.
I think we're back to the parking garage.
I like the parking. I like the parking garage idea.
Over the river?
Yeah.
That's Kenny's idea.
I think a glass with a glass floor.
Over the river?
Yeah.
So there's just something that I wanted to say. I did some work several years ago in Milwaukee County, and what I'm remembering about the reason that parklets are helpful in some communities is because it actually makes the traffic flow safer. It makes it safer for the community because people slow down. They can't go as fast. And just the visual piece of it, and I know there's some data out there around it. I don't know where right now to look for that, but there is information about how that can actually be helpful in making the downtown and that street safer. So something to consider. And I get, you know, the idea of pedestrians and being close to the road and all that, but personally, if I am coming up on where there's outdoor seating, I will always slow down because, you know, I want to be sure that I don't disturb anybody or hurt anybody. So something to think about. But that might be something you want to look into.
Yeah, it's just a couple of points that Chief Cochran made regarding sightlines. This is actually only extending out 5 feet, I believe, or it might be 6 with the edge of the curb, but there'll be a buffer of at least 3 to 4 feet between the parklet and the road, which means that the sightlines will be only better, because this is not as wide as a car. So if anything, it'll open up the sight lines to that crosswalk. The first space after the crosswalk is currently handicap space. The parklet ordinance calls for 4 feet of buffer from that space to the beginning of the parklet. So it'll be 4 feet of unbuilt anything, and then a 3 to 4 foot buffer against the street. So the sight lines will actually be wide, more open. Of course, if someone parks in that,
I think we're getting a little ahead, because I know that you asked for it, but.
I was thinking it could happen concurrently if we're going to go with a draft of the ordinance. I didn't realize it was already in place.
And I think Larry, I mean, just to circle back to Larry's point just for a second, I mean, I do think it bears, the whole parking, although the whole parking thing does bear consideration, and especially that lot next to the clip joint is one that seems like it could probably be improved to eke out another spot or two, but I don't know who has the equipment to do that.
And I seem to recall that the Montpelier ordinance allowed these inside streets, that they were not, in the Montpelier ordinance, they were not allowed on the main street.
They are on State Street.
They are on State Street.
Which is not a state highway, is it?
Well, no.
Nope.
No, I don't think it is.
But side street was the term.
Fairly heavily traveled.
It is fairly heavily traveled. I don't think it gets as point. Well, it doesn't get as much truck traffic is what I'm thinking. You know, not that I'm saying that I mean, I guess I hear the arguments that in a situation like a parklet where you have the parklet's bounded on 3 sides and only opens to the sidewalk, as compared to a car where you have typically 2 doors that exit into the traffic, and people getting in and out of those doors, and it doesn't seem any more dangerous than a car to me. In fact, it seems less dangerous. But, and yeah, anyway. So, here we are. We've gone around this, we circled around again. We have, in fact, heard from more people, which is helpful. What's your pleasure?
Danny, you want to make a motion to make sure it happens the way you want it to happen?
I'm not comfortable doing that, given that I thought we already did that. I thought we already gave direction.
Well, I think one thing that is fairly concrete is that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is recommending that we ask the applicants to have more insurance than the draft proposal was. So to me, it seems like somehow or another we're going to have to revisit that proposal again with the input that we've gotten from people. I think so.
I think 2 million, 4 million, we have 1 million, 2 million.
All right.
But that's an easier, you can.
Yeah, that's a quick.
That's insurance, but again.
This is a detail way down the line.
Right, again, we're.
Right.
That's not down the line, that's right in the ordinance, so we'd have to have that at some point.
What would you like to do, Lucian?
I think you
Wait
guys
another
have
couple
to
of weeks?
decide whether you want to even propose this ordinance.
That's what I'm asking.
So that would, I don't mean to be control freak here, but that would be your motion, right? Whether you're gonna move forward with, okay, yeah, I want to be.
Right.
Whether you want to move forward with proposing this ordinance and then you go on to editing it and then you go through the process. But that's your call.
So, just to, back up, we did last time say, hey, let's move forward with getting this ordinance drafted. And we did gain input, but we're not moving at the same rate.
So do you want to authorize Sean to go back to Bill and say, lifting the whole...
We want to move this
Go ahead and
process
look at that, yeah.
forward. We want to get something.
Because he was given permission to not go forward with it.
Right. I mean, in some ways, from my hearing in here and outside, and I mean, I'm personally on the fence about this, but the only people who I've heard that are for it are these guys, and everybody else has said the parking situation doesn't do it, or the safety situation, or so just from a amount of voters I've talked to, people in general don't seem super psyched about it. Yeah, like I say, I see certain positive points, and I also see negative points, and so that's why I like to take my time with things, and that, for me, I don't like to be rushed into things like this.
So, paths forward, I mean, I feel like we're not
Right, we could
jumping down a path, but-
just lift the hold on Bill's looking at the proposed ordinance and have him come back with something.
and try to solicit more input. I mean, I think even just having a few more people tonight, hopefully will generate more input.
I think if you put it in front of the town at the next select board meeting saying, this is a public hearing, you'll get more people.
You do?
Oh, I do. I haven't asked for my supporters and the Scala supporters to come and speak on behalf of us, because I thought the time to do that would be at the public hearing.
You are correct. I'm just saying that we have had a lot of very quiet public hearings. Christina?
I guess to save the town some money and save you some money, I would work with the League of Cities and Towns on drafting an ordinance if you want to get somebody's advice on this ordinance itself, or the draft that was sent to you. I think there are very few in the state. I'm fairly certain Bill Davies hasn't drafted one, and it's going to cost him a lot of time to get up to speed, and the league probably is already up to speed and probably worked with Montpelier on this. So, and they're very, as far as I recall, that's what they do, is they help towns with exactly this.
To some degree. And they're very helpful, but they don't necessarily take the place of other council.
So for what it's worth, if the preference of the select board is we proceed with the ordinance and we tell the town attorney we're proceeding with the ordinance, is there anything wrong with this? To Christina's point, I mean, this has been beat to death legally over in Montpelier. I'm sure there's been many high-powered attorneys who reviewed the Montpelier ordinance. You know, Bill may find some exceptions to it, but I gotta believe it holds pretty good standing. I mean, Jim Carrion already went right to it in our conversation, saying this is the one that we're all looking at these days. So, for what it's worth. This comment, to Danny's point, you still have to decide how you want to proceed. I haven't heard that yet. Just for what it's worth, and not to complicate the discussion, you know, the league did say you can do a trial run.
Correct.
But
that's another way forward. But the
there
thing,
are too many details, I think, to just sort of jump into trial run.
That's it. That's all I was going to say.
I mean, I think in a fantasy world, what would be cool is if you could put this down on the street for like a week and see what people say, but you really can't. Doesn't make any sense to do it that way, right?
Well, you could. You just flag off.
Have an empty parking spot?
Puts a picnic table. No.
Then you take away the parking spaces, but you don't give anything in return.
No, you can flag it off and put some picnic tables there.
You're saying for like during the public meeting or something, so we can all go.
No, just to get a feel for it.
People's input. If you're looking for people's input and stuff like that, you can flag off the area where it's going and leave it like that for a week.
I bet we get some input.
Yeah. Flagging off two open parking spots and leaving them empty would get input.
Yeah, would get input.
Negative input.
Yeah, it would.
Which is what a lot of people are trying to push this for, so I think we need to get control of the situation.
Well, why don't we just tell Bill to go ahead with it?
So what I need is this group to move, to make a motion that we do something, that we authorize the town manager to go back to Bill with this, that we authorize the town manager to take it to run it, try to find a different lawyer, I don't know.
I move that we authorize
don't do anything.
the town manager to tell Bill Davies to go forward with this.
I'll second that.
So go forward, you mean?
Drafting an ordinance.
Drafting the ordinance, yeah.
Which we then would have an ordinance that we could.
The select board is going to review and decide all these things that everybody's been telling us about, if they're in there or not. Work and get a draft ordinance that the select board's happy with, then you have a public hearing. Then you could amend it to the public's liking, and then you...
Because to some degree, you don't, you need something concrete to discuss, right?
So in some ways, all we got was preliminary look from Bill. He didn't actually look at the ordinance for details. All he said was, whoa, wait, look at other stuff. So we need him to read the ordinance and give us his input on it. It's really, well, he can't draft an ordinance because he needs our input to tell little things.
We have the draft.
We already have
your example.
So you can review that.
We've all looked at that.
Make suggestions.
And we also had, one of the things Bill suggested was more input from like Planning Commission. We did get feedback from the Planning Commission. We had that last time even. And that, one of their, and I followed up with Kristen about that just to get, the feel of that conversation. And she said one of the thing that the Planning Commission was most concerned about was getting feedback from other downtown businesses. People like Larry, people like Co-op, other downtown businesses. And so, we have a better representation now of downtown businesses. Maybe this discussion will generate more input from other downtown businesses.
So maybe we need to seek that out also.
I think it will. Yes, but I'm thinking that will happen if by advancing this process and by having these people go back and say, this is being talked about, you got to become part of, become part of this discussion. If you want a voice, then we'll get that.
Okay.
Again, I don't mean to be redundant, but you don't want this to be talked about in a vacuum, because all you're going to get is what is it going to look like? Is it going to be far away from the curb, or what are these details, which are all in the ordinance and the draft application that we gave you. So if you can nail down, first of all, whether you even want to propose an ordinance to allow this to happen, I don't hear that you've nailed that down. I don't know, you should not spend legal fees on Bill Davies if you don't know that you want to propose an ordinance now, regardless of, the details of what it's going to look like. Don't do that. That's a waste of money. Either decide you want to propose an ordinance, that's not to say you're going to vote to support it, but decide you want to propose it, spend the money to have an ordinance, have something for people to look at so that they have the details that they're going to ask you about in front of them to talk about. That's the whole point of public hearings. But generating discussion in a vacuum is also going to waste your time. It's kind of what we're doing here. And I don't mean to waste your time, but I'm trying to help you not waste your time. I think it's not helpful for us to do it in a vacuum. The community itself to talk about what it's going to look like when there's a document that says what it looks like, if you want to propose a document.
Well,
so I think
last week's meeting said we were going to go forward with it.
So I think we have a motion on the table. We have a motion and a second to move to have the ordinance language reviewed so that we can have an ordinance that we're ready to put through this process. So that's where we're at. And do we have more discussion on that motion? So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll get there. All right.
So do you want me to take guinea pig?
Eric, I'll take that.
Not tonight.
I'll take that.
All right. And next, I'm sorry, Allison, we've kept you. Item 4, Allison Lowe is joining us tonight as our, just to give us an update about the Yellow Barn Business Accelerator project, for which we have an executive session discussion about an economic development loan for $200,000 tonight. We're going to talk about that, and I thought it'd be worthwhile if folks wanted just to have a public discussion that's not part of our private musings about that, just about where that project is and what's going on. I mean, I know to some degree, but Allison, can you just give us just an update about where the project is and what's happening?
I don't know if this had occurred last time I came to a select board meeting, but the Northeast Kingdom Development Corporation did borrow $100,000 on behalf of the project. And so we're closing on the loan, and we're proceeding with design documents with James Co. We are also refining our business plan, and we're looking at a base lease rate of what, $6 or $7, and then probably triple net on top of that. We have been working diligently on getting the environmental review completed. And that process has taken, I think, much longer than anyone originally anticipated, but we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. This week, Stantec did drilling for phase 2 brownfields work on the site, and we should have results from that very shortly. That's critical to completing the environmental review requirement, which also needs to be done before we can actually purchase the property. So we also had a meeting, 2 meetings at this point in Montpelier, and we met with officials to talk about the timing issues, because we've spent a lot of effort on the environmental review process. And I think all in all that was productive, but it also helped to solidify support among various stakeholders for the project. We had another productive meeting today, and I think we'll have a few more with potential funders. We are going to delay the Vermont Community Development Program grant application, but just by a few weeks. We were looking at a board hearing today on that decision, and we're now looking at a June hearing. By then, we should have the environmental review behind us. That was the reason. It certainly does not signal lack of support from Vermont Community Development Program. Probably the opposite. We're continuing to work on the timing issues regarding new market tax credits. And our goal is to recapture the money that we use as bridge financing to replace it with new market tax credits. So, are there specific questions that you have for me?
Has the environmental study raised any concerns?
Not yet, no. Mostly it's just a lot of back and forth. For example, one of the things that was required was to get a V-Trans highway access permit, and we really, in an ideal world, we wanted 2 means of egress, and they want to see 1. We did the Section 106 review, which is because it's a building that's eligible for the National Register, and James submitted exterior elevations of the barn, and that had a little bit of back and forth too with the architectural consultant. He had, specifications for the roofing and the fenestration, but no showstoppers. Oh, we got our LOMA. I don't know if that was our letter of map amendment, so that we're officially outside of the floodplain.
Yeah, it turns out the water doesn't go up over hills typically.
It surprised us there.
It did, yeah. But they did finally agree that the water's probably going to go around the hill.
Yeah.
Isn't engineering wonderful?
Yes, it's amazing. They were able to draw a new line. More questions about this project, or especially as it may pertain to an economic development loan or I suppose the other thing we're discussing is contract with, for architectural services.
So we're doing a executive session about this.
We are.
Momentarily. So I guess I'm a little unclear about if we're discussing stuff in open session, or we're discussing it, like where the line is between what we're discussing in executive session and what's in open session.
Well, I think that we'd like to make, I mean, ideally as much as possible, as much as is publicly available, I think we should discuss in open session. So I feel like questions about, yeah, about the project.
The loan, so this loan.
Yeah.
That we're loaning it to the town of Hardwick to purchase the building.
Correct, and it's being...
At that point, we'll become sole owners?
Yes.
Not immediately at that time, this has to be worked out.
So
what do we get for the loan?
The loan, if we approve, if this board approves loaning the money to the project, or, yeah, loaning the money to the town to do this, and then we'll use that as match for the NBRC grant that we got several years ago to do this. So then that money is, so basically we would approve the loan, and then it would wait. I think there wouldn't be a draw on the money until probably at least June, right, Allison?
Because of the environmental review, even if we complete all of the environmental review processes, which we're getting there, there's still, I think, a 1-month public comment period and a public notice, so.
So we get to that point, and then, yeah, and then the town would be the owner of that
if the
property.
environmental review passes. So
and if the environmental review doesn't pass...
We're not going to get stuck with a big old brownfield down there.
Correct. We wouldn't, right.
And we've also...
Because we wouldn't lend it the money.
Right. So this is, yep, so the, yep.
Should we mention also, you know, we enrolled a property in the Brella program, which is also provides a certain amount of protection from brownfields.
What is that?
Brella, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically, it addresses issues regarding liability for brownfields. So that application went out last week.
Kind of limits the liability that you take on for
brownfields.
For brownfields, yeah.
I believe it's a state program that provides insurance that you can buy into for $500, and provided you're, as the new owner, not contributing to the environmental liability, it provides you, basically indemnifies you for any past liability. That's my understanding.
Keep in mind that this is our second phase 2. We went through this process before. So we don't expect to find any showstoppers.
The first phase 2 didn't find anything.
So we've identified the drawdown. Let's identify the payback.
Payback structure, I believe, as proposed, and this is something that we can discuss whether we're comfortable with, but would be that a balloon payment at the end of the construction phase when the NMTC closes, that we get a balloon payment back, would repay the entire loan, and that would be approximately 2 years out.
And at that point, who owns the facility?
The town still owns the facility. So the deal, but the structure is more complicated than that. So the town, as proposed, the town would be the owner of the property, not just the property as we buy it, but the whole developed thing. So the whole whatever, you know, like a $6 or $7 million improvement to that property. The town would, so I think it's not the objective to get the town or the select board in the business of managing a business park. So what we would do is we would have a long-term lease to another entity, likely the NEK Development Corporation, to manage or to
Well, also
run
we
the project.
allowed for one full-time equivalent from the Center for an Agricultural Economy to actually provide the day-to-day managerial oversight. Yeah. So that, yeah, we won't have town employees going out to unclog toilets and, yeah.
So it looked like it was structured differently than other things that the town owned, like the electric department, or something like that, where it's like one step removed, where we just appoint board members and then they're independent. This looked like it was leased to somebody and subleased to somebody and subleased to somebody else, and then there was a manager, and it was a little confusing to me. And I felt like that needed some, I guess I'm not clear exactly on that. There were several steps involved. I think I have it here.
Lucian, the intent is that the town does own the property, as Eric has outlined, and then whatever entity that is overseeing the operations would be the ones in charge of, everything else that has to do with that operation. So if there's tenants, and I think it's important to know in regards to the public-private partnership, you've got one existing from the community, and we already heard from them at a previous select board meeting. Jasper Hill Cheese is putting a significant amount. They've committed to putting a significant amount into this project. They want to do this investment on the behalf of the community.
Well, that was my other question.
So let me jump back to, I didn't finish my statement, and that was that outside entity, and Allison has mentioned this, if it's the one FTE that worked through CAE, those folks are going to be the ones that are going to be involved doing the overall operations. So, just all I would say is this, there may be multiple tenants in the facility, but it's really no different than how the library might operate, or I guess to use the case, the electric department might operate. They do their operations. It's a town-owned entity, but the electric department does their operations. So just in the basic format, it's really that model.
So we're going to appoint the board members for this?
Nope.
So it's different than that model?
Yep.
That's trustee,
so that's
to
what
your
I'm saying.
point.
Yep.
So it says that the town would own it, and then there'd be a fiscal agent, who's the Northeast Kingdom Development Corporation, that's where you're from, right?
I'm not on
No.
the Development Corporation. I work for NVDA.
NVDA, okay. So they would be the fiscal agent, and so I guess I'm unclear about it. And then there's an arrow that says then there'd be subsidiary of the Northeast Kingdom Development Corporation, which would facilitate funds.
That's to the entity that's set up to actually receive the new market tax credits. The town of Hardwick or the CAE or the Northeast Kingdom Development Corporation can't receive those tax credits directly. So it's a far more complicated structure. But that's what that subsidiary exists for.
Okay. So I guess this is, so this would be the permanent structure, or this would be like a temporary structure while this whole thing's happening?
The subsidiary exists so that we could close on the new market tax credit.
But yes, that structure,
that
ownership structure though, what you're asking is, does that continue to exist like that? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Although in practice, what would happen in that structure is that the very bottom one is the one that ends up running the show.
The Center for an Agricultural Economy.
In this, yep.
Right.
Like they would have, their board has been asked if they would agree to have one FTE to run the structure, to, keep the slots filled, to do whatever.
Right. So we would own it, but we wouldn't have any control at all over who the board members were, or who the people were.
Right.
At all. Well, that's what I was starting to use the electric department as an example, is that so the town owns the electric department, and we don't have any say in their not much anyway, for their day-to-day operations, but we do appoint board members. So there's sort of like a yearly, or as people come up for new elections, if there was some problem, then in theory, the townspeople own it, and they would have, the townspeople through the select board would have some say in how things went down, from year to year. So, but this year it looks like, I guess I'm not really sure. I guess the relationship between the people who own it, the people of Hardwick, and the people who are actually day-to-day running it, I'm unclear on exactly how that's going to work, that relationship.
It would be a lease.
So we would lease it.
That's how it would work.
Yeah.
And it would be just leased. It would be, so it's a little more akin to perhaps the townhouse, which is leased to Neckharts. And we don't have a board member, well, we do, we have Sherry's on net cards, but I don't know
And
that
that's
that's
part of their
necessary.
bylaws.
It is, okay.
So this could be, I don't know, maybe that could be part of the contract, the lease, that somebody,
I mean, that would also be something to explore, yeah.
Right.
If somebody from, we haven't talked about that, but if somebody were interested in that type of structure. So I guess I would also say that there is a little bit different, just to compare and contrast again, between like a Hardwick Electric type scenario, where Hardwick Electric was formed wholly through the
Village of Hardwick.
through the Village of Hardwick, and all the money came through the Village of Hardwick. That's not the case for this project. This is a project really to kind of redevelop and repurpose a property in a way that would be beneficial for our community and the surrounding communities. I guess as I've been involved in this project, I've had exactly the opposite concern that you've had, which is I don't want a situation where the select board or the town manager is getting dragged into like, oh my God, we got this open slot in this thing and we need to fill it, and can you help us, and like the snow's not plowed, and like.
Yeah, I got enough of that.
Right, like.
Well, I guess partly what I'm wondering about is that I was looking at the spreadsheets, and it looks like basically their business plan is to operate at a loss when you count depreciation.
If you count depreciation, that's true.
Right.
So the business plan does not take into account depreciation.
Right, so over the long term, they're planning on operating at a loss,
not necessarily.
Well, you gotta maintain stuff and stuff.
There's a fair amount in there for maintenance.
Yeah.
We're losing the crowd, people.
We actually, we had a budget for maintenance, and we compensated for the fact that we weren't accounting for depreciation. And we based our costs not just on the CAE, but on the Charlie Carter Business Center as well. So in some cases, we assume some worst case scenarios. So if you look at those maintenance costs, they're significantly higher. So that should make up for the depreciation.
So what happens with this business model? We've got a big old fat facility sitting down there that we own.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering, because at some point, like how does that responsibility work?
Who's going to make this work?
Right.
Ultimately.
So that's why in the business plan, there's an FTE for somebody to make it work.
Right. So my other question was, I have a list here. In the application for the loan, it doesn't say anything about how the loan's going to get paid back. And I've heard through talking to people that it's the new market tax credits. Is that right? It's supposed to pay back the loan. But those haven't been applied for yet, or there's like no, right, anything like that?
Correct. I mean, because the new market tax credits, you get them after you've expended all of your money on the project. So it comes in at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That said, there's a significant level of support for this. And so every time we've asked about our likelihood of receiving new market tax credits, we've been given like 99%. I mean, nobody can ever say, it's a slam dunk. But we've been told that, this is a strong fit. Because we're creating a business incubator, a big business accelerator environment. Also because we're offering competitively low lease rates to entrepreneurs. Those are the kinds of things that they like to see to invest in.
But if the question is, could it all go belly up, then it could. So there is some risk.
Right.
Well, ultimately, if it went belly up, if we did in fact own a piece of it at least, we would recoup our 200 grand.
Likely.
Likely.
Right.
So Yeah, so it's a bigger risk than some economic development loans we've done in the past. It's also, the flip side of it is bigger than some we've done in the past too, because the estimated job creation is
So what's going to be
significant.
available in our available fund after we give out this 200?
I think something like 60,000. 61 would be left in the fund. And I think, in my mind, the best situation is that all that money is out.
Well, no, because then the program's over for 10 years.
No, because it's always coming back in.
Well, yeah.
Every month. Right?
So we can give out a new loan for $200 a month or whatever. I mean, it doesn't come in, no, it doesn't come in at that big of a chunk.
Well, okay, so what's the purpose of having it sit in the bank?
Well, there's no purpose of having it all sit in the bank, but there's no, in my mind, I don't agree with it. If it's all out, that's good, because what if someone else needs some? I mean, these are 10-year
Okay, so
notes.
just to run that out though, somebody else needs some.
Right.
Let's say there's 100,000 left.
Right.
Or let's say there's 206, but there's 100,000. Somebody needs some. But you don't, but now you can't give it to them because you want to keep some in the bank.
Well, no, we're not.
Because somebody else might need it.
We don't give out $200,000 loans.
So let's
Generally.
say, right, generally we don't. Okay.
We're
but
very stingy usually.
Okay, so let's say there's 50,000 left. We've given out, let's say we've given out 4 50s and there's 50,000 left. Do we keep that last 50 in case somebody comes? Well, if somebody comes to us, do we say no because we want to keep it in case somebody else comes?
You're very, very good at arguing your point.
I'm just saying.
It doesn't address mine.
It doesn't.
No.
And this is a big
When it's
loan.
gone, it's gone.
No, it's not. It continually comes back. They're loans.
It's fine, let's move on.
I know, it's just a different way of looking at it. Here.
And this is it's a large loan, so it's taking a big chunk of the,
That is definitely true. Yeah, it takes a big bite out of this and it would, yes. The flip side, I think, is that, that there are a lot of people working to make it successful, and the successful project would create, how many jobs?
53 full-time equivalent jobs.
well, that's extrapolating out a theoretical job.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
So you're
It was 35 when we started, now it's 53, so.
But wait a minute, with the involvement of the sellers at Jasper Hill, I think you can look at those job creation statistics and know that they're real. When we did a loan to them, when they were building the cellars, we asked them to commit to creating 10 jobs. And, they have now more than 90 employees. I mean, so they did that and then some. So this level of investment for them is kind of like where they were back in 2009. This is a big next step.
Well, that's just them, and there are 5 or 7 other.
6 other spots for
project.
businesses.
One thing I was worried about is, I mean, not that we have to see it personally, but this whole project hinges on Jasper Hill's financial stability. And has that, I mean, normally if we do an economic loan, we ask for a lot of finances from people. And in this case, we're loaning it to ourselves, but really the recipient in some ways is Jasper Hill in the end. And have there been, I mean, not the recipient, the beneficiary, I guess you could say. And it hinges totally on their thing. So do we know, has there been background work done to know that they're not overextending themselves, they're financially viable?
When I had to get financial statements from them when I was working on the VCP grant. And so I had to look at, income statements and also employee payrolls. And so that was going back, I'm trying to think, at least 3 years.
That was recent.
Yeah, and also, they are investing at least on the onset, 2.1 million, but for equipment and fit up. But in the long run, they're going to be investing probably more than 3.5 million.
So they have that.
Yeah.
They don't have, they would borrow that.
They don't have all of it, but they can do the 2.1 million now. And so as they grow and then they build inventory in that space, then they can complete the rest of the financing. The reason that we know that is that they're committing to put 2.1 million into the funding matrix for the new market tax credits. So more money gets reinvested into it because of what they are putting into it.
So, a lot of times when we do economic development loans, we ask for collateral. I think in this case, our collateral is in fact the property.
Right. Yeah, I guess I feel like the collateral's a property, but I feel like I don't want to treat this like a grant. I want to still treat it like it's a loan, like we were hoping to get it paid back.
Yeah, I think we should have the complete expectation that it's getting paid back. Yeah.
So that's probably why I'm trying to ask these questions, because I would like it to get paid back. And the upside is, I thought you were going to say this earlier when you said the upside is that this in theory get paid back in 2 years, so then we'd have it back to the loan out 2 years, right?
That is completely correct.
So it wouldn't be a
We're reviewing it as a particular one. Because in fact, the way that whole new market tax credit works is they want to count that 200,000 as a loan into the project, and then in the end it goes through all this magic and you get a
whole nother muddle.
It's a whole nother muddle, and then but the end of, like, they have this closing, and a lot of things get paid off. This would be one of them. Yes, it is definitely a shell game.
The only question is, are there 3 shells, or I think we're up to a 5 shell game now, so.
I think there's more. There's a lot of shells.
Ball is getting harder to find.
So the other thing that was clarified to me, that, I don't know, there's been different discussion about at meetings, so people have expressed concern about that if Hardwick insists that it's going to take it off the tax rolls. And there was some discussion at some meeting that there would be a pilot program that they would pay payments in lieu of taxes. But it turns out if it's a town building, you can't do that. So there will be, I don't know quite how that'll all work out.
We'll have tax assessment now on an old barn.
Right.
They generate a whole lot of taxes right now.
Right. Well, it's assessed at 160 or something like that.
So it's going to be assessed at 6 million when it's completed.
It'll probably end up being assessed at quite a bit less because the Food Venture Center was.
Oh, well, it's going to be
more than it is now.
It's going to generate, but we're not going to see any of it.
Right. So it's not that.
So it still is a loss.
But the town will see the benefits in other ways.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. That's one of the shells, yeah. Definitely is.
Yeah. It is.
So there'll be no taxes generated off this?
It would be a town-owned thing. We don't have taxes.
I wonder how many people are going to comment on that when they finally figure that out.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
because
sure
honestly,
nobody thought that wasn't going to be a taxable building.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with a for-profit business being in a town-owned facility.
It's an interesting concept.
Because that is a pretty big benefit.
So,
because if someone was to build that with their own money,
so they don't have
all of their own money, and they would be paying cobalt taxes after we would give them
10 years or whatever.
10 years, but they would be paying.
Correct, but keep in mind there's this is going back to that ownership structure. There is a point at which we're leasing this property. So even though there's no tax, that's a point where we could work out.
It's income.
We could work out a lease rate.
But the lease rate, even without tax, was already shown to be like not cover depreciation and not count depreciation. So it's not like it's
already.
Sorry. So I'm not talking about lease rates that tenants are paying to be in the space. I'm talking about the lease rate that the town is leasing this property to the whole product. In your structure here, the town leases it to
whoever it is down the chain there.
Correct.
But still, they need to make enough money to then pay at least on it. Because actually, was it at least even on this sheet? I don't remember seeing it.
So yes, but if we come back to, like, it seems to me that a project like this should, now maybe not day one, but should be able to generate at least the tax burden that is currently on that property. It should be able to generate more.
For me, it's more about a business, a substantial business not having to pay taxes that any independent person, you know, Dan next door, he's paying taxes on his business, his building. Whether he, you know, if he leased it from Dennis was paying the taxes on the building. You know, it's, to have a business of that magnitude and not have any property taxes is a pretty big benefit. No wonder they're so excited about it. Because I would be too.
But I don't, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I do, but did you hear what I'm saying about leasing?
Well, I'm hearing what you're saying, but, you know, again, there's a lot of shells, but definitely more than 5 now.
Yeah.
But Lucia's point that it's essentially being leased out per square foot, not in a profitable rate. It's being per square foot is a low cost, right?
No, to say that it's not at a profitable rate, we're trying to find the sweet spot, so.
Right.
I mean.
If the people that are leasing the space, I'm not picking on anyone, can lease this space for less money than they could lease another building that somebody had to build and was paying taxes on.
Yeah, I don't think we're probably gonna have a lease rate that's quite like that, but.
So what are you saying? It's not.
I think it's gonna be comparable.
It's gonna be comparable to what they're paying up in the industrial park for Howard Menashe's building. So if Jasper Hill, and again, I'm definitely not trying to be negative here, but if someone goes up there and rents a square foot, is the cost going to be the same as it is in this building?
I don't know that's going to be the same.
Or compared?
I think it should be, don't you think it has to be comparable? Otherwise, who's
well,
going to want to lease it?
But in that square foot in Howard's building, there are property taxes figured into that cost of that, weather maintenance and upkeep and everything. So, the property tax thing is kind of a big one that I hadn't thought about till tonight, to be honest with you.
So, I believe that if...
There were a couple of hands up.
I know, I just want to hit this point while I'm thinking about it, but I believe that with the ownership structure, with the town owning it, I don't believe we can pay ourselves property tax.
Well, I agree with that, probably.
And I don't believe we can enter into a pilot agreement with ourselves.
We could enter into a lease agreement in lieu of a pilot payment.
Well, do you have an acronym for that?
No, I understand that, Eric,
so I think you'd have to lease it. I think you'd have to do it as a lease.
But you can set the lease as if there were taxes.
Sure.
Well, absolutely, but if this whole thing is, if that occurs at the very end, when it's grand opening days past and everything's hunky-dory, and now we're going to shake this out, what the lease amount is going to be.
I would want to shake the lease out first.
Yeah, relatively soon.
So, I think that from this, just from this discussion, we can go back to, you know what, and we can go back to Rose and say, we need to account for a lease rate in here, in the business plan, that's appropriate. For
and who would you charge it to?
The lease.
Whoever's leasing it.
Yeah, to the, I think it, ultimately we get paid out of, like the CAE is going to be operating, so ultimately, I think it would have to come out of operating revenue from the project.
So you would be asking the CAE to pay a lease to operate the site?
So
to manage the site?
I did run this by Steve. We had Rhodes today about it, and he thought that would be the cleanest way to, because we talked about this not doing a pilot, and he said, well, you do have to do a lease anyway, so just make,
to give them the structure they need to run the responsibilities or whatever.
So charge it through the lease was his recommendation.
So were they thinking that we would pay them to run it? I mean, it said a lease right in the paperwork here, so I'm not sure who is.
No, but they're paying for a full-time equivalent to already manage the site, so I'm just trying to figure out where the lease.
What's a full pay for a full-time equivalent? What's that mean?
It means that there's one full-time job. that they're paying for. They're paying for one person to work full-time. And it might be a full-time equivalent, like 2 part-time jobs, but, so they are adding at least one full-time equivalent to their payroll so that they can manage the site. So I'm just trying to figure out where the lease.
But in turn, in managing the site, aren't they gonna turn around and charge each one of these businesses that are using it a lease fee, a fee to lease their space? So that's where that money is gonna get built into, right, is the leases.
Correct.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
They'd be passing it along, basically.
But in all that needs to be something in lieu of taxes, an amount.
Well, you could,
Is that what you're saying?
it's not, but
You may not be allowed to label it that.
right.
But you
Well, an
certainly-
amount, no, I agree with you. No, I didn't mean that, I mean a dollar.
Somewhere, a revenue line that would say lease, yeah. Sorry, so we had people in the back that had hands up.
I just want to make sure you're taking consideration that it's creating...
Can you state your name, please?
I'm Emily Hirschberger, and I'm currently the general manager at Buffalo Mountain Co-op. I used to work at Jasper Hill with Allison on the first grant in creating the 10 that turned into 80 while working there, jobs or more at Jasper Hill. And so I just want to make sure you're taking consideration that it is creating 53 jobs, and it's not just about that Jasper Hill. And it's about creating a space for more organizations to get started in Hardwick. And every time you have a company in a town, the people that work there, every dollar they spend adds to the town around it. And I'm not saying that they should be exempt from taxes, but I think you should look at the profit that's going to be generated from it beyond the tax base. And there is something to say to creating an advantage for businesses starting up in a town instead of creating a barrier. And I know Allison has done great work in getting more businesses going. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
It's a good point, and I don't argue with that, but just so you know, I wish Larry was still here, because the housing in Hardwick has kind of gone to the model where we no longer, people that are, while housing loses money. In the old days, private people borrowed money, paid interest, paid full taxes, paid for repairs, and didn't get anything for free. And that's how the economy spun in the old days. And nowadays, we seem to be headed in a place where I understand that we need to help new businesses, but we also, it's not fair for the people that are trying to be competitive in the private sector. Again, to have space to lease that is not, it's not fair to have an independent person have space to lease and can't get a tenant because the town is providing a reduced lease rate based on there's no property taxes. The town shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
You should also look into if this is indeed a reduced lease rate because there's no taxes, because from what I understand, it isn't exactly inexpensive for Jasper Hill to rent out of the center of the county. It's not like they're getting a great break on it.
That's fine, but my point is, the town of Hardwick is creating a tax-free zone for business, essentially. If they're not charging property taxes on a substantial piece of real estate, if they can't take that, what would taxes be on a $5 million building? If you don't have that in your cost, for the annual cost to operate that facility, that gives you an advantage over an independent person that would have that tax assessment. And so if they're not giving you a break in their lease, then they're double bad, because that means they're putting that money somewhere else. Because the person, again, the Ford Garage pays its taxes on that facility. So if we were to create a new dealership in town in the same type of structure, it would be an unfair advantage to that person renting that tax-free space. Now, if somebody was not, if the landlord, still charged the same amount, then he's putting that money somewhere.
I think it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about keeping the lease rates lower, we're talking about keeping them within reach of what's realistic for this town, not keeping them artificially lower. When we did a lease rate comparison at the onset of the business planning component, we found that new construction for something at this scale would probably be going for about $17 a square foot. And just check it, there's no way.
Well, exactly, because you know why? The person that built that building has to pay property tax.
So that's
what I'm saying.
But what also gets it back in line is really the new market tax credits and the use of grants. So it's a combination of several factors. But that's why we're calling it a business accelerator. I mean, because we are trying to let entrepreneurs get access that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Do you know that Jasper Hill wouldn't otherwise have access?
Well, they need this.
No, but what I'm saying is that in some ways.
No, they also are looking at expanding where they are in Greensboro. They couldn't expand as big a place, and they also don't have a major limiting factor for them up there is they don't have access to municipal water and sewer. Electricity is better now, but roads, yeah.
But they're also, with them here as an anchor tenant, they make this project work, and so others can benefit. So if they were to build it on their site in Greensboro, I mean, we wouldn't see the shared benefit.
And they would have to pay taxes.
Yeah, in Greensboro.
I mean, you guys are kind of, we're being rough on me here. It's not about the lease rate, it's about, one of my complaints is about taxes. And I don't.
So I think, I don't recall exactly, because this project has been in the works for 2 years anyway. At least. And so I don't remember exactly why it came down to, there's some funding reason that I can't remember why it made more sense for the town to own the ground, the property, the project, and then lease it.
For the grant funding.
It's for grant, okay. So that does necessarily, I believe, take it off the tax rolls. Alberta can correct me if I'm wrong, and I also think that now, I had thought that maybe we could do a pilot, but I guess the pilot isn't applicable to town-owned properties either. So you're correct that there's not going to be property tax. What I'm trying to say is that there could be revenue generated through a lease instead of through taxes, and
tax stabilization payment is what I recall hearing at some of the previous meetings.
Yeah, but it isn't exactly that.
You can't pay that to yourself.
You cannot. So but because we do have this structure where it's being leased.
Well, that's true. So we could do something to mimic the tax stabilization.
Correct, but it cannot be that.
So that our lease increased a certain amount every.
Right.
Something else.
Jesus.
Okay, but anyway, I feel like we've kind of beat that one.
Yeah. I think we're going to resolve that one. I mean, again,
I had other questions, but I'm too blurry to.
Okay. Are we ready to move on?
I am.
Thank you, Allison.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Allison.
Appreciate it.
All right, next.
I was off for this till tonight.
Select board reports.
Good thing about 2.5-year projects like this, I've been against it, I've been for it.
You got lots of time to keep moving.
Yeah.
It's not done yet.
No, but might not move forward yet either.
All right.
Now.
Select board reports.
We appreciate the big crowd.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out. Holy cow.
We're here twice a month.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Christina, no, I was just going to have her talk to Doug about why people don't run for select board. He had a question about that, and she seemed pretty interested in operations of select board, so I think they should get together.
She's done select board.
Anyway.
I took her place.
She did this for a while.
I know, but
She's eating all your cookies.
I know, but I thought she might have input for Doug's question. Anyway, that's a sidebar. New business? Old business? Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All motion carries. Thanks, Doug.